Hey guys, tonight we sail beyond the edge of the map into a place where fog clings like damp wool and the air smells like salt, smoke, and secrets. You're standing barefoot on the wooden deck of a Viking longship, the North Sea lapping quietly beneath and a low mist curling over the bow like it's trying to whisper something you can't quite hear. The crew doesn't say much, just nods, grunts. One guy sneezes like a dying goat and keeps rowing. You're not exactly sure how you got here. Maybe a dream. Maybe you passed out in your bathtub. Either way, you're in for something chilly, damp, and slightly more interesting than trying to fall asleep to another podcast about taxes. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is where you are. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You can't see the coastline anymore. Everything's faded into a thick gray blur. If this were a movie, someone would definitely get eaten by a sea serpent right about now. You glance around, no sea serpents, just a guy eating dried fish like it's chewing gum. The longship groans softly as it rides a lazy swell. The wood beneath your feet is cold but smooth, worn down by decades of voyages. The sail overhead flaps once, heavy damp canvas, and then settles again as if deciding it's too tired to be dramatic. You duck your head under a low beam as you shuffle forward. Someone hands you a mug. It's hot, smells like burnt oats and seaweed. Viking coffee, apparently. Not exactly your vanilla oat milk latte, but it'll do. The helmsman, an older man with a beard that looks like it's trying to retire, stands at the stern with one hand on the steering oar. He hasn't blinked in 10 minutes. You wonder if that's just a Viking thing or if he's lost in thought or frozen. He finally speaks. You'll know we're near land when the sea smells different. You nod, like that means something to you. It doesn't. It smells like wet socks and history out here. Still, something about it is oddly comforting. The slow creak of the ship, the rhythmic splash of oars dipping into the water, the breath of cold air filling your lungs, it starts to lull you. Not boring exactly, just steady, familiar, as if you've done this before in another life. Maybe one where you wore wool tunics and knew how to cook over a fire without crying. A gull cries out above, slicing through the fog like a tiny sky alarm clock. The sailors barely look up. You squint. Just more gray. The sun is somewhere above you, trying its best to shine through this thick Norse soup. One of the younger crew members points ahead. Merker, he says. You don't speak Old Norse, but context clues suggest he's not talking about a theme park. The mist thickens. Now it feels like you're sailing into a cloud. It clings to your eyelashes, to your beard if you have one, to your thoughts. There's no horizon anymore, no up or down, just you, a boat, and the gentle whisper of waves brushing against wood. You feel your heart slow, your mind untangle. You let go of the to-do list, still echoing somewhere in the back of your head. There's no laundry here. No unread emails, just the sea. Just now. The ship continues. No rush, no destination you can name, just the journey itself. Somewhere behind you, a man starts singing, a low melodic chant in a language older than your dentist. It rises and falls with the waves. You don't understand the words, but the sound settles in your bones like warm broth. You look up at the sail again. It's puffed slightly, just enough to keep moving. The wind here is soft. Not lazy exactly, just considerate, like it knows you're trying to sleep. A crewman walks by, hands you a blanket made of some kind of coarse wool. Smells like goat and campfire. You wrap it around yourself anyway. It's oddly perfect. You sit down near the center of the ship, the world reduced to hush. All you hear now is the sea breathing, the wood creaking, and the gentle hum of a Viking lullaby. Somewhere ahead, land is waiting, but for now it doesn't matter. You're here, in the fog, in the calm. And you are not alone. The man across from you yawns so wide you can practically hear his jaw complain. He mutters something that sounds suspiciously like, Mondays in Old Norse. You think about saying something clever but decide against it, mostly because you're pretty sure any attempt would come out as a sneeze or a grunt in this damp, slow-motion world. You glance around, taking in the rest of the crew. Some are chewing what looks like bark. Others are checking knots in the rigging or fiddling with their belts like they're solving a puzzle only their pants understand. And then you see it. The helmet. It's sitting near one of the benches, propped up like someone posed it for a museum. Big, shiny, iron, and yes, it has horns. You smirk, of course. You walk over, pick it up, and turn to the nearest sailor. So, who's the cosplay fan? The sailor blinks at you like you've just offered him a pineapple pizza in the 9th century. Then he laughs, a big belly-deep laugh that echoes across the deck like a seal burping in stereo. No one wears that, he says, shaking his head. That's a joke. We use it to scare seagulls off the salted fish. You blink. Wait, so the horned helmet thing? He shrugs. People like stories better than truth. Truth is itchy and takes longer to explain. You put the helmet down. It tips over and rolls a little before coming to rest against a barrel. A seagull gives it a dirty look and flaps off. Apparently horned helmets were never really a thing. Not for battle anyway, maybe for ceremonies or scaring off rival tribes with bad fashion sense. But in actual combat, they preferred practicality over pointy aesthetics. I mean, you try squeezing through a door with 2 salad bowls sticking out of your head. You sit back down and take in the ship again, suddenly seeing it a little clearer. No Hollywood dramatics, no slow-mo axe fights, just real people in real wet socks doing real rowing. One of the older women on board, yes, there are women on Viking ships, walks by and hands you a chunk of bread. It's dense enough to build a house with. You thank her and nod politely, trying not to break a molar. She pats your shoulder. The helmets are fake, she says, but we were terrifying anyway. You believe her. Her gaze could curdle milk. Later, as the ship drifts slowly through the mist, someone starts carving into a bit of wood. The shape forms gradually. An intricate dragon head, just like the ones on the prow of the ship. You ask what it's for. Replacement, he says. Sea monsters get nervous when you stop looking like a problem. You laugh softly, then stop when you realize he might not be joking. The hours pass slowly. The fog begins to thin, just a little. Enough to see the outline of another Viking ship far in the distance, its sail half lowered, gliding like a ghost across the gray sheet of sea. You squint and see someone wave. Just one hand, a lazy motion, like a neighbor who isn't sure if it's you or someone who owes them money. You wave back, because what else do you do, right? The crew around you begins to shift a little, stretching, adjusting gear, checking ropes. There's a quiet tension in the air, not danger, but anticipation. Like something is about to happen, like land might finally be close. You overhear a few murmurs about the sky. The older man with the semi-retired beard points upward. The clouds are thick in the west, he says, means something's changing. You look, but all you see are clouds that look like overcooked mashed potatoes. Still, he seems to know what he's talking about, and honestly, at this point, you'd believe the ship is being guided by seagull dreams if someone said it with enough confidence. You try to imagine what it was like back then. Setting out into open ocean, no compass, no charts, no radio, just a sail, some stars, maybe a suspiciously magical rock, we'll get to that, and a whole lot of guessing. But the thing is, they made it. Across oceans, to faraway lands. Iceland, Greenland, even parts of North America, long before Columbus was a twinkle in his compass. How? That's what you're about to find out, but not all at once. For now, you just sit, listen, let the ship carry you forward. The mist still lingers, but it's thinner now. The air has changed. There's a smell, earthy, soft, green. Someone whispers, land. You don't see it yet, but you feel it. Somewhere ahead, something waits. Something old. And in this quiet moment, you realize something important. It's not the horned helmets or the axes or the tales of conquest that made the Vikings legendary. It's the way they sailed into the unknown without flinching. And tonight you're doing the same. One quiet wave at a time. Someone pokes you gently with the handle of an oar. You blink awake, or maybe you weren't really asleep, just wrapped in that dreamy haze that clings to early morning fog. The poking continues. It's accompanied by a chunk of something handed toward you. Eat, says the sailor, his beard wet with sea mist, his breath smelling of smoked fish, and something that might have once been onion. You take the offering, a bowl carved from wood, filled with a grayish lump. You give it a cautious sniff. It smells like someone boiled cereal and ambition. You ask, what is it? He shrugs. Breakfast. Right. Viking breakfast. You dip a finger into the mush. It's lukewarm and oddly chewy, like oatmeal got tired halfway through being cooked. There's a small strip of fish balanced on top, so dry it crunches like paper when you bite it. You try not to look offended. One of the younger crew members grins at your reaction. Better than last week, he says. That batch had weevils. You smile faintly. Somehow, this feels less like a joke and more like a culinary review. You finish your portion partly out of politeness, mostly because your stomach doesn't care about texture at this point. The crew eats in near silence. A few mutter to themselves. One guy hums a melody that sounds suspiciously like a sea shanty about laundry. You ask someone if that's true, and he responds, "No one sings about laundry. That's cursed business." The ship bobs gently as you lean back, bowl empty, mind soft. The wind is picking up slightly, enough to pull the sail into a steady curve. You hear the flutter flap as it adjusts, the groan of ropes stretching under tension. There's a rhythm to it now. Not dramatic, just dependable. Someone drops a bundle of firewood next to a tiny metal brazier bolted into the deck. You blink. They're cooking. On a boat, while moving, you edge closer to watch. A woman you haven't seen before is stirring something over a shallow flame. Probably more of the oat mush, but this time with herbs. Maybe even salt. You watch the smoke trail up into the air, curl, then vanish. It smells better than it looks. Comforting. Like someone tried to make soup out of fog and longing. She notices you watching. You'll get used to it, she says. Then after a pause, or you won't. Another sailor passes behind you, carrying a small wooden crate. He stops, opens it and pulls out something shiny. Thin metal tools, carefully wrapped in sealskin. You realize with a little surprise that he's sharpening knives. On a rocking boat. Mid-sea. The trust and balance here is unreal. You lean over to ask how often people fall in. Only once, he replies, grinning. Ever? You ask. No, he says, just once each. You decide not to press further. Mid-morning light begins to push through the mist. It doesn't sparkle. It sort of slides down between the clouds like molasses trying to be elegant. The deck glows faintly. You start to notice more detail, the hand-carved beams, the runes scratched into the benches, the soot marks around the fire pit where someone clearly tried to cook something rebellious. And the people, these sailors, warriors, tradesmen, they're not shouting or barking orders. They just exist in rhythm. Each one knows what they're doing, like Zed, or at least pretends convincingly. No panic, no chaos, just a floating village doing breakfast. You close your eyes for a moment and listen. The sea isn't quiet, but it's calming. The waves slosh like someone flipping heavy pages. The wind hums through the sail and the occasional splash of an oar settles into your bones. You almost don't notice the singing at first. A voice, low and gravelly, begins to chant near the stern. It's not a song in the way you expect, more of a slow, rising drone like someone calling to the ocean with memories. Others begin to join in, layering tones until the ship itself feels like it's humming. The song is about food, apparently. You catch enough words: oats, fish, hunger, gods, fire. One verse seems to be entirely about the proper way to dry seaweed for chewing. Another mentions a goat who could predict storms. You can't tell how much is myth and how much is dinner instructions, but no one else seems confused. Everything's a song out here, says the bearded man beside you, who you're now realizing might be the ship's cook. Easier to remember what matters. You nod. It makes a weird kind of sense. As the song trails off, the sky opens just a little more. The clouds part enough to show a pale blue above. A cheer rises, not loud, just grateful. One sailor points out a cluster of birds flying low across the water. Land birds, someone says. You scan the horizon. Nothing. Just gray water and waves. They're better at finding breakfast than we are, adds another. Turns out watching birds was a legitimate navigation trick. Follow the birds and eventually they lead you to shore. Or to a really angry seagull nest. Either way, progress. You sigh and lean back again. The bowl, the song, the floating fire, the sky, it's all so strange and quiet and wonderfully slow. You think about your own breakfasts. Rushing. Toast you don't finish. Coffee you reheat 3 times and still forget to drink. Alarms, traffic, that weird coworker who always wants to talk before 9 a.m. And now, this. A wooden boat, a foggy sea, a group of people who trust birds, boil oats and sing about goats that control the weather. You let your eyelids drift shut. Just for a moment the waves whisper beneath you, the sky breathes above, and your belly is, miraculously, warm. You wake slowly, not to the jolt of an alarm clock, but to the deep familiar creaking of ancient timber flexing with the sea. Your eyes flutter open, and overhead, the sail is still puffed with a modest wind, glowing softly as the morning light filters through linen stained with age and salt. The ship rocks gently and you realize you've shifted during sleep. You're now curled against the side rail, wrapped in a scratchy wool blanket that smells of sheep and fire smoke. Someone must have covered you while you were out. Vikings, turns out they're not all blood and axes. You sit up and stretch, every joint clicking like it's trying to say hello. The deck is alive with motion, ropes being pulled, oars being shifted, the soft slap of feet moving with purpose. The wind has picked up slightly and the ship, sleek and narrow like a blade slicing through soup, is surging forward with surprising speed. It's then that you notice the ship in full. Long, low, ridiculously well balanced. The wood is a rich, dark pine sealed with tar and some kind of fish oil that gives it that oceanic cologne smell. Shields hang along the rails like decorative dinner plates, alternating in faded reds, greens, and blacks. The prow curves upward into a snarling dragon's head, carved with swirling lines that look like they're dancing if you stare long enough. It's meant to frighten spirits. Or tourists. Possibly both. You step carefully across the deck, barefoot, the planks smooth from years of wear. A sailor nods at you as you pass, and for a moment you forget this is 1,000 years ago. Or maybe it's right now, and your other life is the dream. You reach the prow and rest a hand on the wood. It's warm, solid. You can feel the pulse of the ship, like it's alive, breathing with the waves beneath it. "This one's called Windwife," says a voice beside you. You turn. It's the helmsman, the bearded one with the 1,000-yard stare and the shoulders of someone who's rowed through a hurricane for fun. He doesn't look at you, just stares ahead. "Built her 3 winters ago," he says. "She's fast. Not the fastest I've sailed, but clever in a crosswind." You nod as if you understand. You absolutely do not. But the way he talks about the ship, it's not like he's describing an object. It's more like he's talking about a friend. You ask what makes the ship so special. He finally glances at you. She listens. Okay, chill bumps. Turns out Viking ships, Drakkar, as they called them, weren't just good looking. They were engineering marvels, long and thin with a shallow draft, meaning they could sail across oceans and up shallow rivers. Imagine a sports car that can also park in a kiddie pool. They were fast too, not just sail fast, rowing fast. Raiders could hit a monastery, loot it, and be back in the mist before anyone even finished saying, "Did that goat just scream?" You walk along the side of the ship now, watching how the planks bend and flex with the swell. Not stiff, but cooperative, like a dancer that just happens to be made of trees. The rigging above you creaks as a sailor adjusts the sail. You catch a glimpse of how it's rigged. Simple, almost suspiciously so. Just one square sail, and yet it manages to keep the ship flying over water like it's being pulled by secrets. You ask someone how they steer without a rudder in the middle, like modern boats. He points to the big oar hanging off the starboard side, the steering board. Ah, starboard. That's where it comes from. 1,000 years later, and we're still borrowing their words. And their breakfast ideas, apparently. You see someone chewing fish again. You crouch near the side and run your hand along the hull. It's cold, damp, but smooth. You see where nails have been driven in, some with tiny runes etched into their heads. "Protection," says another voice. You glance over your shoulder. A young woman, barely 20, her hair braided into a crown that could deflect arrows. "From storms," she adds, "and stupidity." You grin. "Both pretty common out here." She snorts. "You've never met Harold. His last idea almost got us eaten by a walrus." You're about to ask more, but she walks off, muttering something about dried eel and seriously, how do we keep running out? You return to watching the sea. The ship rides like it's floating on breath. Every plank works with the others, not against. The ribs of the hull, bent from green wood and shaped over open flame, curve like the bones of a beast that knows how to swim. And it hits you. This isn't a boat. It's a body. A creature made of tree and tar, muscle and sail. And every person on board is part of it. The oars are limbs, the helm a spine, the sail its lungs. No wonder it listens. The mist around you begins to break up. Thin fingers of sun pierce through and scatter light across the deck. Someone cheers softly. Another just grunts in appreciation, and then far off, just on the edge of sight, you see it. Land, barely a silhouette. A gray smear against the lighter gray sky. But real. Solid. promised. You lean into the rail and watch it grow. It's not home, not yet, but it's something. And for now, that's more than enough. The coastline stays on the horizon like it's teasing you. Close enough to taste, but not close enough to touch. The mist still hangs like breath on glass, and every now and then it rolls back in, as if the sea hasn't quite decided whether it wants you to find this land or not. You're watching the sail, the way it ripples in the breeze like it's daydreaming, when someone beside you mutters, "No compass, no stars, just us and the sky's mood swings." You turn. It's the knife sharpener from earlier. He's lounging like someone who's both deeply relaxed and quietly preparing for a storm. "Wait," you say, "no compass." He raises an eyebrow. "What's a compass?" Fair enough. The truth settles in your stomach like a stone. These sailors are navigating without compasses. No needle pointing north, no maps with red dotted lines. Just wind, sky, the sea's texture, and memory. You look around and realize there is a system. It's just not the kind that prints well on paper. The helmsman, still one hand on the giant steering oar, is watching the sky. Not the clouds exactly, but the light around them. You follow his gaze. The sun isn't visible, but there's a brightness in the fog, like a secret shining just out of reach. "Sometimes," he says without turning, "you don't need to see the sun. You just need to know where it's pretending to hide." Okay, that sounds poetic and incredibly unhelpful. But then someone else joins in, the young woman with the eel complaint. She points upward. "Look how the clouds glow over there. That's east." Probably, unless the gods are in a mood. So it's not about precision, it's about patterns. Guessing just well enough to survive. They call it cloud reading. You squint at the sky. Sure, maybe that cloud looks brighter than the others. Maybe it's east, maybe it's west, and you're about to discover Denmark the long way. The ship rocks gently beneath you. A sailor begins pulling on one of the lines to adjust the sail. You watch how they do it, how the angle changes ever so slightly, catching the wind not head on but just off center, the way you might tilt your hand out of a car window to ride the breeze. It's subtle, elegant, like sea ballet with splinters. You ask how they know which way to go if there's no sun and no stars. "Birds," says someone. "Watercolor," says someone else. "Current," adds another. And then one voice at the back says, "The way your stomach flips when you're facing north." You don't ask if that last one's real. It probably is. And now your stomach is flipping for unrelated reasons. Still, the more you listen, the more you realize these methods, unscientific as they sound, work. They've worked for generations. Before Galileo, before cartography, before GPS tried to send you into a lake that one time last summer. They're reading the sea like a diary, or a mood ring, or possibly an angry pet that occasionally spits storms, and it works. The mist begins to lift more definitively now. You can see the coast again, clearer this time. Jagged rocks, patches of green, a flock of seabirds drifting overhead like bored weather forecasters. One of the sailors points. "There," he says. "That ridge wasn't there last time." You blink. The land changed. He shrugs. Maybe the sea ate some of it. You decide not to press. More movement on deck now. People checking gear, tying ropes, preparing to land, maybe. Or just going through rituals that make them feel like they have some control over the outcome. A group gathers near the prow, discussing which inlet to steer toward. No shouting, no arguing, just quiet back and forth like deciding on dinner plans with the sea. You hear something strange, like a chime. Turns out it's a set of wind bones, hollow bird bones strung together with sinew, clacking gently as the wind passes through. You ask their purpose. "Sound tells us the wind's shifting before we feel it," someone explains. "Also scares off sea spirits, allegedly." You wonder if that counts as a musical instrument or a weather report. Either way, it works. The ship leans slightly as the wind shifts and the sail pulls tight. A sailor adjusts the rigging before you even notice anything changed. It's like they're part of the ship itself, muscle fibers in a wooden body, moving on instinct. You glance at the horizon again. Closer. Definitely closer now. You can make out what might be a beach, though it's more rocks than sand. Still, it's land. Solid, stationary, not likely to drift away when you close your eyes. One sailor calls out, something short and sharp. The ship pivots ever so slightly, responding like a dog to a whistle. Everyone moves, not frantically, just coordinated, like they've done this 1,000 times, which they probably have. And you Modern you stand in the middle of it all, useless but fascinated, wondering how they haven't all crashed into an island by now. You think about compasses again, about how much we rely on tiny devices to tell us where we are, how to get where we're going, what to avoid. And here, on a 1,000-year-old ship with a dragon face and a bone wind chime, people just feel the world. The sky dims a little as the clouds regroup. The wind kicks up, a crew member tightens a line. The coast looms larger now, within reach. No compass, no map, just eyes, bones, clouds, birds, guts. And yet somehow they always get there. There's a hush on board now. Not silence. There's still the slosh of the sea, the creak of the mast, the occasional cough from that one sailor who might have swallowed a bug. But the kind of quiet that means something important is about to happen. Like the moment right before a storm, or right before you realize you've been holding your breath without knowing it. You're standing near the mast when one of the older crew members shuffles over. His beard is frosted with sea salt, his face carved by wind and years. Without saying anything, he holds something out to you in both hands, a small translucent stone, not glassy like a crystal ball, but more like frosted quartz, milky, cloudy, with veins running through it like frozen smoke. You look up, confused. Sunstone, he says, like that should explain everything. You turn it in your hand. It catches the light, though what light is a bit unclear. The sky is still heavy with mist, and the sun itself hasn't shown its face all day. You raise an eyebrow. It's pretty. The old man chuckles, the sound low and warm, like a creaky chair in front of a fire. It shows the sun, he says simply. You blink, but there's no sun. Exactly. He walks away before your brain can reboot. Someone else comes over, thankfully younger and more talkative. She watches you squint at the stone like it's going to start talking. You've never used one before, she guesses. Nope, thought maybe it was a fancy worry rock. She grins. It's better than that, hold it up to the sky, yes, like that. Now turn it slowly, see the glow. And you do see it. Not a direct beam, not a laser or a sparkle, just a subtle shimmer that shifts across the surface when you angle it right. A bright patch that moves, then settles in one spot. That, apparently, is where the sun is hiding, behind clouds, fog, reality. It polarizes light, she says, which is a very science-y thing to hear on a wooden ship with goat-smelling blankets. You tilt the stone again, the glow shifts, soft, ghostly, but real. So this is how you find direction. She nods when the sun plays hard to get. You glance around, no compass, no GPS. But somehow this cloudy rock knows more than you do. You stare at it longer than you should, and for a moment, it feels like the kind of magic that would have gotten someone burned at the stake if they pulled it out at the wrong medieval dinner party. But this isn't magic. Not really. The Vikings were using sunstones, likely calcite or Iceland spar, to find the sun's position through overcast skies long before anyone else was figuring out the basics of magnetism. It's clever, it's old, and it works. You wonder what else they've hidden in their pockets. You can try using it to guess the hour, she adds, if you want to feel smart and be wrong. You try, you fail, you laugh. She shrugs. That's pretty normal. Another sailor walks past and sees you holding the sunstone. He smirks and says something in Old Norse that includes a word suspiciously close to beginner. You ask what he said. She grins. He thinks it looks like you're praying to a rock. You put the sunstone down very gently, like it might judge you, but deep down, something shifts. You're beginning to realize that for all the jokes, all the grunts and burps and questionable breakfast choices, these people know what they're doing. They've built a system from what they had. Clouds, water, birds, and light, and it's carried them across the world. And here you are, learning to follow a sky you can't see with a rock that doesn't glow unless you tilt it just so. The wind changes. You feel it a little colder, pushing slightly off starboard. The sail shifts, the ropes groan, and the ship eases into the adjustment like it was waiting for permission. The helmsman murmurs something under his breath, maybe a blessing, maybe a complaint, and tilts the steering oar. Land is closer now. You can see trees. Real ones. Gnarled and hunched against the wind like old men squatting by a fire. The rocks are sharper, blacker. You catch sight of a shoreline, thin, pebbled, scattered with driftwood and bones of ships that didn't quite get it right. Wind's with us, says someone. For once, adds someone else. Don't say that out loud, mutters a third. The gods might hear. You tuck the sunstone into your tunic, just in case. The The woman from before points toward the coastline. That bay curves east, she says. We'll follow the wind past the ridge, then drop anchor. You nod like you understand. You don't, but it feels good to pretend. Especially now, when it seems like pretending is slowly turning into believing. The ship glides forward, silent but sure, like it knows where it's going. The crew is already moving, coiling ropes, tightening packs, checking weapons and boots and bags. Not frantic, just focused. And you feel something in your chest that wasn't there before, a kind of quiet trust. In the ship, in the crew, in that weird little rock that told you the sun was hiding in the clouds like a shy celebrity. This is no longer a guessing game, it's navigation, Viking style, and it's working. The coastline is drawing near now, dark and sharp like a jawline etched into the sea. You can make out waves breaking over scattered rocks, low pines clinging to the edges, and birds, so many birds, circling like they're all late for a very intense meeting. There's a buzz of energy on deck. People are prepping, not just to land, but for what might happen after they land. And you catch it, the shift in posture, the tightening of belts, the way weapons are double-checked just a little too carefully for a peaceful picnic. Trouble? You ask the closest sailor, who's currently strapping an axe to his back like he's about to chop firewood or make a dramatic exit. He shrugs. Maybe. Locals aren't fond of surprise visits. You glance at the ship's dragonhead prow, which is quite literally a carved wooden monster. Yeah, you say, can't imagine why. The helmsman calls out a few clipped words in Old Norse, and suddenly everything moves. Oars slide into the water, the sail loosens, ropes are pulled, anchors readied. It's beautiful and terrifying, like watching a dance choreographed by someone who's fought in at least 6 bar fights and won 5. And then, you hear it. A horn, sharp, loud, from the shore. Everyone freezes for a second. You squint toward the sound. There's a figure on the cliffs, small, cloaked, holding something that might be a weapon or maybe just a fancy walking stick. Hard to tell at this distance. Then, another horn, closer, and now you see more shapes moving, emerging from the trees, spears glinting, shields raised. A small group, maybe 20 or 30 people, watching your ship slide in like an uninvited guest at a family reunion. The mood on deck tightens. Not panic, but tension, a crackle in the air. You grip the rail, and suddenly that cozy blanket from earlier feels very far away. You ask the nearest warrior what happens now. Depends, she says, pulling a helmet over her head. Not horned, thankfully. Just sturdy, dented, and quietly intimidating. Sometimes they talk, sometimes they throw things. Sometimes we're back on the sea before anyone even finishes yelling. And apparently, that's normal. Then she adds, once it rained for 5 minutes and everyone just went home. You wait. No rain. The ship is drifting into a narrow inlet now, flanked by tall, jagged cliffs. There's a small beach ahead, but no one's moving to disembark. It's a standoff. The locals are lined up on the shore. Your crew is lined up on deck. Everyone's watching everyone else with the energy of people trying really hard not to blink first. Then a miracle. Someone on shore waves. Not the angry kind. A real wave. Arm high, fingers loose. The universal gesture of hello, we come in peace. Please don't stab us immediately. There's a collective breath on board. A few murmurs. One guy mutters, thank the sea spirits. Another mutters, don't thank them yet. Still, the tension breaks just slightly. A few warriors lower their axes. Someone sets down a shield with a clonk that's a little too loud for comfort. And then the real moment of relief comes. Rain. Just a light drizzle at first, but enough to matter. You feel it hit your face. Cold, fresh, unexpected. A blessing or a warning depending on who you ask. The crew laughs softly. Someone says, looks like we're going home early. But they don't actually move. Instead, a conversation begins. Slow, cautious, across the water. A sailor on your ship calls out in a friendly, practiced voice. Someone on shore responds. You don't understand the words, but the tone is everything. Calm, curious, not hostile. Apparently, this is going to be one of the easy ones. And still, it's strange. No swords, no screaming, just mist, rain, and people staring at each other while trying to remember how diplomacy works. Someone offers you a chunk of dried fish. We've had shorter battles, they say, chewing noisily. Once, we got rained out before we even landed. Another time we fought for 20 minutes, then realized we were cousins. You blink. Seriously? They nod. Very awkward family dinner afterward. You lean against against the rail again, watching the cliffs, the trees, the people on shore. The rain is steady now, enough to soak your hair, blur your vision, and soften the outlines of everything. It's not a real battle today, just a maybe, a memory that could have happened, but didn't, and in a way, that's rarer. Most stories love conflict, axes, fire, drama, but this is the kind of history that slips between the pages, the almost battles, the encounters that ended in conversation instead of blood, the days when it rained just enough to stop the fight. Somewhere behind you, someone sneezes loud enough to scare a bird. Another warrior laughs. Told you it'd be a short one. And slowly the ship begins to back away from shore. No raid, no loot. Just a horn, a wave, and a drizzle that convinced everyone to try again next season. Somewhere in the distance, a gull cackles like it knew this would happen. You smile. Not every voyage ends in glory, but sometimes the best ones end in peace. The rain eases into a lazy mist, the kind that doesn't fall so much as it hovers, like it's too tired to hit the ground. The shore fades behind you, just a blur of gray and green now. No battle cries, no victory songs, just silence, broken only by the rhythmic creak of wood and the occasional sniffle from that one guy who forgot to wear his fur color. You wrap the wool blanket tighter around yourself and move toward the center of the ship. There's warmth here, literal and otherwise. A small fire pit smolders gently in its metal cradle, and a few crew members have gathered around it like cats finding the one sunbeam in the house. You ease down next to them, expecting the usual grunts of mild acknowledgement. But then someone scoots over and hands you something. A clay bowl filled with steam. You peer inside. It's not mush this time. It's liquid, thin, slightly cloudy, smells faintly herbal, possibly moss, possibly goat. 'Tis bath day, the woman next to you says, as though that explains the soup. You pause. Bath day? She nods. Once a week, whether we need it or not. You take a cautious sip. It's surprisingly mild, earthy, even soothing. Warmth creeps down your throat and into your chest. You feel your shoulders unclench for the first time since the ghostly horn blast on shore. Around the fire, boots are coming off. Layers are being loosened. No one's exactly stripping down, but the general atmosphere is shifting from possible battle to group camping trip with excellent weapons. One man pours water from a jug onto a pile of hot stones in a corner bucket, and steam rises in a soft hiss. You blink. Is that a sauna? I thought the Vikings were all war and pillaging, you say half to yourself. The woman next to you chuckles. We're clean pillagers. As more steam rises, the air thickens. People close their eyes, lean back, let it soak into their bones. You do the same. The boat rocks gently beneath you, the fire crackles quietly, and your damp clothes begin to feel almost tolerable. They don't talk about this part in the stories, you murmur. A voice replies, because no one writes sagas about scrubbing armpits. Fair point, but here's the thing. Vikings did bathe. Often. More than most medieval Europeans, in fact. Archaeologists have found combs, tweezers, even ear spoons. Yes, that's a thing. Cleanliness wasn't just personal, it was social. Weekly bathing was common. Hot stone steam, standard. Public bathhouses, sure. Personal grooming tools, absolutely. It makes you wonder how many dramatic warlords secretly just wanted 10 quiet minutes with their ear spoon and a bowl of moss tea. One crew member is sitting cross-legged, braiding his beard with practiced ease. Another is picking something out of his fingernails with a small knife that looks like it's been through 4 lifetimes. Someone behind you sneezes into a cloth, wipes it on their shirt, and throws it overboard. Progress is never perfect. The steam starts working its magic. Your fingers uncurl, your jaw loosens, the boat, the wind, the damp. It all blurs into a soft, pulsing rhythm. It's not sleep exactly, but it's close. That perfect middle place where everything stops trying so hard. Someone begins humming. A low, gentle tune with no real words, just breath and tone and something ancient woven into the melody. Others join in. The fire crackles, the boat rocks. You close your eyes, you drift. Time becomes water, the hum continues. And the mist outside thickens, not menacing, just there, like the sea is wrapping you in a blanket of its own. At some point, someone pours more water on the stones. The hiss brings you halfway back. You open one eye. A small line of steam curls into the sky like a question you're not ready to answer. You'll sleep better after this, someone says. Sweat the fear out. Makes room for dreams. You nod, even if you don't fully understand. Someone passes around a chunk of soap, or what passes for soap. It smells like lard and pine needles and possibly goat again. You clean your hands, your arms, your face. The grime comes off in streaks. So does something heavier. Stress, worry. Yesterday, you feel lighter. Later, as the steam fades and the fire dies down, the crew wraps back into their layers. The chatter is softer now, even the oars move more gently, like everyone's been hit with a wave of tired contentment. You lean against the side of the ship, breathing in the mist. Your skin is warm. Your mind is foggy in the best possible way. The water stretches out in every direction, endless and patient. The woman who gave you the tea earlier leans beside you and says, "See, clean pillagers." You laugh, not loudly, just enough to let the sea know you're still awake, still here. And tonight you'll sleep on a ship that smells faintly of soap, steam, and stories the world forgot to tell. Night has come softly, like a cloak draped over your shoulders while you weren't looking. The mist still lingers, but now it glows silver where the moon sneaks through. No stars tonight, just the sound of water brushing against wood and the slow, deep hush of a ship that has nothing to prove. You find yourself near the center fire again, where warmth and company cling together like old friends. The sauna steam has long faded, replaced by smoke from damp firewood and the occasional crackle of something unidentifiable being dropped in the flames. Hopefully not a sock. Again, someone hands you a mug. Not tea this time, something thick darker with a smell like roasted grain and wet stone. "Bjor," says the sailor, a wide grin stretching under his beard. "Good for cold bones and long stories." You nod politely and sip. It's aggressive, somewhere between beer and liquid Fireplace. But once the shock passes, it settles on your tongue like something earned. There's a slight sweetness behind the smoke, like someone accidentally spilled honey into a thundercloud. You're still processing the flavor when someone clears their throat. And then, he begins. A low, rhythmic chant in Old Norse. Not the sailor who gave you the drink, but the man with the sunstone, now sitting cross-legged, elbows resting on his knees, eyes half closed as if reading words written inside his own skull. The rest of the crew goes quiet. The chant continues, slow and steady. It rises like smoke, falls like snow. And though you don't understand a single word, you feel it. In your ribs, in your fingertips, like something from 1,000 years ago reaching gently into the present. The fire pops once, like it's clapping. You lean in slightly, caught in the rhythm. Someone murmurs a translation beside you. It's about a warrior who stole a goat. You blink. A magical goat, they clarify, that brewed endless ale. Aha, much better. The chant shifts now, turning into something more melodic, almost a song. Other voices join in, adding harmony, adding rhythm. One man taps on a wooden bowl, another hums in a low, droning bass that sounds like it's coming from the sea itself. You realize you're witnessing a kvuthi, a traditional Viking poem song hybrid. Part story, part music, part ancient jam session. And it's glorious. This isn't the roaring, mead-spilling Viking party Hollywood loves to sell you. This is something quieter, older, more intimate, the kind of night where people tell stories to remember who they are. Someone stands and begins to act out part of the tale, mimicking the drunken goat, staggering dramatically across the deck, sloshing imaginary ale. Laughter rolls across the ship. A child, you didn't even realize there were children on board, claps with glee. The performer adds a cartwheel that ends in a dignified fall to thunderous applause. You laugh too. You can't help it. This is joy. Ridiculous, unpolished, human joy. And yet beneath the laughter, the stories matter. Every tale carries a lesson about bravery, foolishness, luck, loss. Even the one about the goat. Especially that one. Because the goat was lost. The ale stopped flowing. The hero wandered. The point wasn't the beer. It was the journey. The search. The stubborn belief that somewhere, somehow, what was lost could be found again. You sip your Bjor. Okay, now it tastes better. The singing slows. The fire dims. People stretch, yawn, settle. Blankets are pulled tighter, boots used as pillows, cloaks become beds. The ship remains in motion barely, but the night wraps itself around everything like wool. The storyteller stands, stretches his arms wide as if to hug the sky, then sits and says one last line. The woman beside you whispers, "He said, we drink so we remember, not so we forget." You nod, and for a moment all is still. The ship rocks gently. The coals glow red in their final breaths. Somewhere out there, the moon watches. Somewhere beneath, the sea listens. And above all that, a sky of forgotten stars hides behind the mist, waiting for someone to sing them awake again. Morning doesn't arrive so much as it slouches into existence. The mist hasn't left, it's just loosened its grip, letting a thin, pale light filter down over the ship like a sheepish apology. Everything is damp, slightly squishy, and smelling faintly of wet leather, smoke, and last night's fermented goat stories. You sit up slowly, blinking pure out of your skull. Around you, the crew is already in motion, not hurried, just purposeful, quiet. Someone's scraping the ash out of the fire pit. Someone else is muttering at a tangle of rope that clearly started this fight during the night. You wrap your blanket around your shoulders and shuffle toward the bow. That's when you see them. Women. Not a surprise, necessarily. You've seen women on board since the start, steering, rowing, throwing side eyes that could deflate a horse. But these women aren't part of the crew. They're standing on the new shore you've pulled up to, tall, wrapped in cloaks, their hair braided and bound with beads that glint faintly in the misty light. One raises a hand, not a wave, a signal. The mood on the ship changes instantly, but not with fear, with alertness, readiness. You watch as the helmsman walks forward, raising one hand in return. Behind him, several others begin unloading barrels and satchels, trade goods from the look of it, furs, tools, jugs of something that smells like it could either fuel a fire or start one in your chest. Someone claps a hand on your shoulder. You'll want to see this, they say, leading you off the ship and onto land. Your legs wobble a bit. The ground doesn't sway like it's supposed to. Your feet sink slightly into soft earth. The trees smell different here. Pine and cold stone. The air is cleaner, hungrier. You follow the others to a longhouse, a proper Viking hall, its thatched roof patched with moss, smoke trailing lazily from a hole at the top. Inside, the warmth is immediate. A fire crackles in the center hearth. You blink as your eyes adjust to the dim orange glow. And at the far end of the room, seated on a carved bench wrapped in pelts, is a woman with eyes like stormwater and a sword resting across her knees. You do not ask if she's the leader. She doesn't need a title. She is the room. Someone steps forward and greets her in a language so old it feels like it should be sung. The two talk quietly, heads close, hands occasionally gesturing toward the barrels now being carried in. You lean toward the man beside you. So, is she a queen? He grunts. She's herself. That's enough, right? Turns out women in Viking culture weren't exactly waiting around in tower windows. They ran farms, managed trade, filed divorce, fought in battles, buried swords with them. You try to imagine explaining that to your 8th grade history teacher. She'd have needed a second chalkboard. In this hall, no one bows, no one shrinks. These women speak with authority, laugh with their whole bodies, and carry knives like they're decorative earrings. One sits beside you without asking and offers a small loaf. Dense, warm, filled with something chewy and possibly legal. She tears off a piece for herself, chews thoughtfully, then says, "What's your name?" You tell her. She nods once and says, "You can keep it." You're not sure what that means, but you accept it. Later, someone brings out a small harp, another, a flute carved from bone. Music begins again, not loud, not formal, just threads of melody weaving between low voices and crackling fire. A child chases a chicken across the hall. Someone tosses a bone at it to distract it. It works. Chicken crisis averted. You sip another warm drink. Not pure this time. This one is lighter. Herbaceous. Definitely has something fermented in it, but no regrets. Conversation flows like the sea. Easy, meandering, occasionally crashing into things. You notice the woman from the head of the hall rise and cross toward the fire. Everyone goes quiet again. She speaks, not loudly, but with weight. Her voice is low and steady. She talks about the sea, about the fog, about dreams. You catch phrases, the quiet between storms, the sky that hides its light, the fire inside the ship. It's not a speech, it's a sharing. Not about glory or conquest, but about the little things. Steering in the dark, knowing when to turn back, trusting your gut when your eyes lie. You think about the women who kept the farms going while their partners were off sailing. The ones who bartered with strangers, held lands, led rituals. The ones who gave advice so sharp it could slice a man thinner than the onions he forgot to bring home. You realize then that Viking women didn't wait to be written into sagas. They were the sagas, the quiet kind, the steady kind. The ones who stayed, who stitched the sails, who knew how to bind wounds. and trade goats for silver, and hold a sword the right way up. As the fire dims and the harp plays a final note that fades like breath, you lean back against the wooden wall and let it all wash over you. Outside, the sea waits. But in here, you've seen a different kind of strength, the kind that doesn't roar. It simply is. In the morning, the longhouse smells like ash, bread, and too many people who forgot to take their boots off before sleeping. You peel yourself off the pile of furs someone insisted was extra comfortable. It was not. And stretch every bone in your back, making a noise like it's negotiating. Outside, the fog has finally thinned, not gone, just agreeable now. Less like a wall, more like a blanket someone's pulled off your face just enough so you can breathe. The ship is waiting, bobbing gently near the shore, its dragon prow watching the tree line like it suspects something is about to yell. You're making your way back to it when someone whistles from behind. It's the boy, barely 16, the one who spent most of yesterday pretending to sharpen a spear and mostly just carving his name into a log. He grins, points upward. Whales. You look. Sure enough, just beyond the bay, two sleek backs break the surface. One, then another. Their spouts burst skyward like exclamation points. A third one surfaces near them and then dives again, leaving behind a ripple that stretches all the way to where your ship waits. No one panics. In fact, the crew seems pleased. They'll lead us out, says a woman wrapping a rope around her shoulder like it's a scarf. You frown. Wait, you follow whales? She nods, dead serious. If they're headed northeast, it means wind. If they dive shallow, it means a smooth crossing. If they slap the water with their tail, it means Harold's about to say something stupid. You blink. She gives you a look. We're still working on the science. Apparently, whales were more than just big fish to avoid for Viking sailors. They were part of the navigational toolkit. Massive, blubbery oracles. If you knew what to look for, the direction they swam, how long they stayed on the surface, what birds circled above them, you could predict weather, current, rub, and sometimes even landfall. And sure, maybe some of that was guesswork and superstition. But when you're floating on the sea with no compass, no map, and only a suspiciously magical sunstone to guide you, even a tail slap from a passing whale starts to feel like a message from the gods. Do they ever get it wrong? You ask. Sure, the boy says, but so do we. Touche. Back aboard, preparations begin again. Supplies are stowed, sails checked, gear lashed down. The mood is good, quiet, confident, like the ship itself knows where it's going now. You take one last look at the shoreline. The women from the hall are there, watching. Some wave, some just nod. The leader, the one with the stormwater eyes, raises two fingers and points toward the horizon. Safe wins, someone translates, or maybe go, and don't mess it up. The ship slides out of the bay. The whales are still ahead, barely visible now, their backs breaking the surface with graceful regularity. The crew adjusts course without needing to be told. The boy from before is sitting near the prow, watching the whales like they're old friends. Do they ever come close? You ask. He nods. Sometimes they follow us, sometimes they disappear. They don't owe us anything. There's a silence between you, broken only by the wind finally returning. Steady now, filling the sail with a satisfying thump. The land is smaller now, the trees a smudge. The longhouse already forgotten by the horizon. Forward. Always forward. You lean against the railing, feeling the spray of salt and wind, and think about how ridiculous this all is. Chasing whales, reading birds, talking to clouds, trusting a stone to find the sun, and yet, it's working. The ship is moving. The sea is calm. The sky, though gray, feels open. You glance back at the whales, still gliding ahead like living punctuation marks in the sentence of your journey. And you realize, sometimes, the best way to find your way is to follow something that doesn't need a destination. Just direction, just rhythm, just trust. The boy tosses you a bit of dried seaweed. Chew it, he says. It helps with seasickness. You chew, it tastes like wet paper and disappointment, but your stomach stops complaining. Ahead, the whales dive, long, slow, final, and your ship keeps going. The whales are gone now, just a ripple where they once were, like the sea is trying to remember their shape. The crew doesn't seem worried. You get the sense this happens often. The whales appear, point the way, and then vanish back into their private, echoey underworld without waiting for a thank you. You're watching the water, trying to see if they'll come back, when someone tugs your sleeve. It's her again, the woman with the half-laughing eyes and the eel-based grievances. She gestures for you to follow, wordlessly, like a cat leading you to something important and probably dead. She takes you to a quiet spot near the stern. She doesn't speak right away, just kneels, rummages through a sealed leather pouch, and then pulls something out. It's ink, not the kind in a bottle, but a thick paste in a stone pot, black as midnight and smelling faintly of burned bark and herbs. Beside it, a small, slender needle, bone-handled with a glint of metal at the tip. You blink. Is this what I think it is? She nods. Tattoos. You sit down beside her, suddenly very aware of your unmarked arms. Everyone on the ship has one. Most, she says. Some of us more than one. She rolls up her sleeve and shows you her forearm. You lean closer. There's a long line of symbols, not decorative exactly, but deliberate, like the path of stars you've never seen. One looks like a fish with wings, another like a jagged line through a circle. Another is just a dot inside a dot. Are they stories, you ask? Maps, she replies. Memories, warnings, names. You touch your own wrist, suddenly feeling like a blank page in a world full of handwritten epics. Tattoos are how we remember where we've been, she continues, dipping the needle carefully into the paste, and sometimes who we are. She doesn't ask if you want one. She doesn't offer. She just explains, like someone handing you a map and trusting you to decide whether to follow it. Another crew member walks past, arm bare. His tattoos are older, faded like old ink on a rain-washed letter. You spot the head of a raven, a broken chain, and something that looks suspiciously like a chicken leg with a crown. You don't ask. They're not just decorations, she adds. They hold. Hold what? What you can't say out loud. You sit back and look around. The boat feels different now, more alive. Not just a vessel, but a floating archive. Everyone's carrying their story on skin, in silence, in ink that doesn't fade easily. Even the helmsman has something creeping up the side of his neck, sharp lines, jagged and tangled like branches or lightning or scars that learned how to sing. You think about your own skin, what it would say if it could talk in symbols. Maybe a cup of coffee and a cracked phone screen, maybe a pair of feet dangling in cold water, or a compass that only points at feelings. Maybe a whale, or maybe nothing yet. Not every story needs to be written right away. Still, she hands you the needle, holds it out like an invitation. You don't take it, not today. She nods again, no judgment, no rush. You watch her turn back to her work, tapping the needle gently against her own arm, adding a single new mark. A curved line beneath a dot, a wave, a ship, maybe both. Later, you see others comparing their tattoos, pointing, laughing, remembering, not showing off, just connecting, like pages from the same book. You see that some of the marks match, that some don't, that some are half finished, waiting for more. That night, under a quiet sky and a sail that barely moves in the gentle breeze, you dream of symbols, you dream of ink, of skin that tells the truth. And somewhere in that dream, your arms are no longer blank. You wake to the sound of shouting, sharp, urgent, but not panicked. The kind of shouting that says you really want to see this more than we're all going to die. Still, it gets you on your feet fast. The sky is brighter now, still cloudy, but the kind that glows like light is leaking through from another world. You follow the noise to the bow, where half the crew is gathered, all squinting toward the horizon. And there it is, a wall of ice rising out of the sea like a sleeping god. Blue-white, jagged, shifting with slow grace. An iceberg, or several, a whole field of them. Some are the size of houses. One looks like a mountain wearing a hat made of birds. Another drifts lazily past, cracked through the middle, groaning like it's trying to remember something. The water around them sparkles unnaturally, too bright, too clean, like someone spilled starlight into the ocean. You stare. Everyone stares. The ship begins to slow, oars dipping gently, sail loosening. The crew isn't alarmed, but they are alert. These aren't rare out here. They're just rude. They don't follow rules. They drift, they flip, they crumble, and they can end a voyage faster than bad bread in a case of sea lice. Someone beside you mutters, "Ice is trickier than fire. Fire you can smell." Another replies, "Fire doesn't float directly into your ship while pretending to be majestic." You move closer to the rail. The ice is beautiful. Too beautiful. The edges glow in soft gradients of blue. Deep ancient blue, the kind you only see in glacial crevices and heartbreaks. It's mesmerizing. You lean in, a hand grabs your collar and yanks you back. Don't get romantic with it, growls the helmsman, eyes fixed forward. Ice wants you soft, then it breaks your ribs. Right, noted. The woman with the eel complaints is at the helm now, calling directions like she's ordering lunch in a thunderstorm. The crew responds instantly. Oars dip. The ship pivots. A breath of wind pushes the sail just enough to glide you between two towering slabs of ice. It's like entering a cathedral built by winter itself. The sounds change here. Everything becomes smaller, quieter. Your own breath echoes. The sea is calm, but not in a friendly way. More like it's holding still to see what happens next. Above, ice towers lean precariously, drips falling like slow-motion rain. One chunk cracks loudly in the distance, and a shard the size of a cow drops into the sea with a bloop and a hiss. Keep your eyes on the water, someone says. You do. And there it is, a shadow beneath the surface, long, shifting, not another whale. Worse, the bottom of the iceberg. Most of the ice is below the waterline. The visible part is just a hat. The rest is a sneaky underwater monster waiting to teach you about buoyancy. The hard way. Navigating through this field requires more than skill. It requires instinct, timing, trust, and a slightly insane level of confidence. The helmsman squints, adjusts the rudder with 2 fingers. One of the rowers makes a sound between a cough and a prayer. Another closes their eyes like that'll help them see better. You hold your breath, and the ship slips between 2 giants like it was born to do this. No scraping, no impact, just a faint shimmer of cold mist as you pass through the gap. Someone exhales loudly. That was too close. Someone else mutters, too awesome. And then the woman steering says, we're not through yet. You glance ahead. She's right. More ice. Denser now. Tighter passages, some moving. You realize the sea here flows differently. Sluggish, weird, like it doesn't trust its own currents. Then the ice follows those strange paths, drifting like enormous puzzle pieces, looking for the wrong board. One of the younger crew members points toward a narrow channel, barely wider than the ship itself. Too tight, someone says. No, says the helmsman. It's perfect. A debate begins, quiet, firm, full of gestures and frowns. You interrupt. Why not wait? Let it drift apart. The woman from earlier snorts. Ice doesn't care about your schedule. Fair. Eventually, a decision is made. Go. The crew shifts. Everyone finds their place. Oars raised. Breath held. You glide forward. The channel is so narrow, you can hear the ice whispering against the sides of the hull, like it's trying to get a word in before you escape. You lock eyes with one of the warriors across from you. He's mouthing what might be a prayer, or just the word nope on repeat. And then, freedom. The ship bursts out of the ice field like a sigh you didn't know you were holding. The water ahead is open, the sky brighter. The mist behind you thickens again, swallowing the frozen maze like a trick it was hiding up its sleeve. Laughter breaks out on deck, loud, relieved, victorious. Someone claps the helmsman on the back. He grunts. Don't thank me, he says. Thank her. You follow his gaze. The prow of the ship, the dragon's head, still staring forward. You think she guided us? You ask. He shrugs. Maybe. Or maybe the sea just likes us today. Either way, you survive the ice and learn this: what glitters isn't always kind, and the sea rewards those who respect her coldest silence. The sea has changed again. It always does, but this time you feel it before you see it. The air is warmer now, just slightly. The mist has loosened its grip, revealing patches of sky with real color, a cold, washed-out blue like the lid of an old tin box. The crew is quiet, not in the sleepy way, but the focused kind, the kind of quiet that smells like metal and memory. Someone is sharpening a blade near the mast, long strokes with a whetstone, rhythmic and deliberate. You notice others doing the same, checking buckles, adjusting straps, tightening belts. It's not panic, it's preparation. You sit next to a woman binding her wrist in leather strips. Something coming? She nods toward the east where the coastline is beginning to rise. Low hills at first, then ridges, then a glint of something unnatural. Not stone, not tree. You squint. Buildings, or at least the memory of them. Low structures, squared edges. Stone walls still mostly standing, and something taller. Tiled roof, pillars, faint golden shimmer in the morning light. Not Vikings, she says. No, definitely not. The ship veers slightly toward the bay without a word spoken. The crew moves as one. Some pull on cloaks, others hide blades beneath tunics. You get the feeling this isn't a raiding party, but it could be if needed. You ask, who are they? She just says Easterners. And that's when it clicks. You're approaching land held by the Byzantines, the Eastern Roman Empire. Gold, mosaics, sandals, and very good eyebrows. Your ship eases into the shallows. No greeting party, no horn, no arrows. Just birds on the rooftops and the wind nudging a faded banner tied to a pole. It flutters half-heartedly, dark red embroidered with something you can't make out. The crew disembarks slowly, cautiously, no weapons drawn. Yet, you follow them into the broken streets. Grass is growing between the stones. A few cats dart under doorways. It feels less like a city and more like a memory. Still, it's not abandoned. You hear footsteps before you see anyone. Then, from one of the standing doorways, a man appears. Robes, sandals, beard like a scroll unraveling. He holds up both hands. Peace. No one speaks for a long moment. Then someone from your crew steps forward. A tall man who's been silent most of the journey. He speaks in a different rhythm now. Not Norse, Greek maybe. You understand only fragments, trade, safe passage, honor, water. The robed man responds cautiously politely like someone trying to pet a bear that might be housebroken. And then surprisingly, he smiles. Not the fake twitchy kind, a real one, tired but kind. He beckons. You follow the others into a shaded courtyard where a fountain still gurgles, faint but persistent. Water is passed around, bread, even olives. The crew eats carefully, as if unsure whether the hospitality is real or a very long setup for a trap. You sit near the edge of the group, watching, listening. The Byzantines speak quietly, with purpose. They carry no weapons that you can see, but they don't need to. Their buildings are their armor, their walls, their legacy, and yet something passes between the two groups. Respect? No. Older than that. Recognition. You glance around. A mural on the wall, cracked, faded, beautiful. It shows ships, not Viking ships, sleeker, painted, more delicate, but they're sailing, and the people aboard look like they're listening to the sea. You nudge the woman beside you. They sail too. She nods. Their way. Not better, not worse, just different. You sit quietly, chewing bread that tastes like lemon and surprise, and think about that. Different sails, different gods, different faces, but still, the sea. The Byzantines and Vikings were enemies once. Traders, hired blades, mercenaries, this lovers. That's history's weird magic. It forgets to pick a single label. Some Norsemen even became bodyguards for Byzantine emperors. The Varangian Guard, they were called. Iron tough, sworn silent, paid in silver and respect. You can almost picture it now. Tall northerners in dark cloaks standing stone still in the golden halls of Constantinople, wondering how they got from snow to marble. Someone passes you a fig, you take it without speaking. There's no deal made today. No fight, no bargain, just bread, water, and a place to sit. But that's its own kind of diplomacy. On the way back to the ship, you walk slower. The robed man walks with you for a few paces. Then he stops, reaches into his sleeve, and hands you something small. A coin. Not shiny, worn. One side shows a crowned figure. The other a ship. You look up. He says only one word. Shah both, and turns back toward the ruins. You stand there holding history in your hand, and you understand. You can be both, sea and land, outsider and guest, Viking and something else entirely. You return to the ship, this time when it leaves the bay. No one looks back. The wind changes again. Not sharply. Just a subtle shift, like the sky has quietly turned its head to look in a different direction. The sail flutters once, then swells, catching the new current like it's been waiting for an excuse to stretch. You're sitting near the stern now, feet tucked beneath a folded cloak, watching the clouds. They've gathered in strange patterns today. Long, thin streaks that slash across the sky, intersecting like scratch marks on glass. You nudge the person next to you. Is that normal? They look up, squint, then nod slowly. Fish-scale clouds. That doesn't help. You wait. After a long sip from his water skin and a very dramatic pause, he finally adds, means change is coming. Probably rain, maybe wind, could be a baby. You blink. A baby. He shrugs. Last time with clouds like this, we picked up a goat and it was already pregnant. So, you decide not to argue with his meteorological method. But others are watching the sky too now. Older crew members pointing, murmuring, adjusting the rigging slightly. Not afraid, just thoughtful. It seems that clouds mean more out here than they do where you're from. Back home, clouds meant either a canceled picnic or a mood to match your email inbox. Out here, clouds mean direction, threat, relief, story. The helmsman calls for a minor course correction. The ship leans slightly to the left. The waves respond by growing a little choppier. Nothing dramatic, just a firm reminder that yes, the sea is listening too. That's when the woman with the tattoos appears beside you again, holding a flat slate in one hand and a piece of bone chalk in the other. She gestures toward the clouds. Want to learn? You nod. Of course you do. She starts drawing on the slate. Quick, sharp strokes, arcs, dashes, a long curve. That's a fish-scale cloud, she explains. Alticumulus, mid-sky. Means shifting pressure. You see that texture, you plan for change. Another mark, this one long and wispy. Cirrus, she says, high up, always moving east. Wind up there tells us what wind down here will do. She glances up again, then adds a rough jagged line. And that one, low, heavy. If it comes in fast, get your cloak and tie down your stew pot. You laugh. She doesn't. Seriously, she says, nothing ruins morale like soggy dinner. You study the slate, the sky above, and slowly you begin to see it, the language. Because clouds aren't just shapes, they're signals, messages. A floating code book that Viking sailors learned to read not by theory but by necessity. No compass, no forecast. Fine. The clouds were enough if you knew how to listen. You spot another pattern to the northwest, layers of low, fast-moving streaks crawling in from the edge of the sea. You point. She nods. Rain, light, fast, gone before supper. And sure enough, the wind picks up a little. The temperature drops. A fine spray begins to fall. More mist than rain, just enough to make you blink and consider wrapping your cloak tighter. The crew adjusts again. Quiet. Efficient. Some cover their heads, others laugh. One guy holds out his tongue like he's auditioning to be a very bored raindrop detector. Do you ever get it wrong? You ask. The woman shrugs. Of course, but the sky tries to tell the truth. The drizzle doesn't last. Within the hour, the clouds begin to break, revealing streaks of sunlight that shine down in theatrical beams, illuminating patches of sea like the gods are playing favorites. You sit back, warmed again, your cloak damp but tolerable. Someone passes you a slice of dried apple. You nibble in silence. The boy with the seaweed snack from earlier plops down next to you, nodding toward the sky. Looks nice now, he says. Yeah, you reply. Fish-scale clouds were wrong. He grins. Not wrong, just early. And just like that, you understand. The sky doesn't speak in declarations. It speaks in suggestions, possibilities, warnings wrapped in softness. You lean back, eyes half closed, listening to the ship groan gently with each rise and fall of the water. The wind strokes your face, the sail flutters once, then settles, and above you the sky keeps writing its messages in cloud and color in silence. You wake to the sound of cloth snapping in rhythm. The sail is alive again, catching gusts with just enough force to remind everyone they're not the ones in charge out here. The wind has shifted. Not wildly, but with conviction, like it's just remembered where it needs to go. You sit up and stretch, noticing how the entire ship is leaning ever so slightly to one side. Not enough to be alarming, just enough to tell you that you're no longer drifting. You're moving. The helmsman is at his usual post, gripping the steering oar with the calm focus of someone who could do this in his sleep, and probably has. His beard flutters in the breeze like it's considering its own career in navigation. You walk up beside him. He nods, but doesn't take his eyes off the horizon. Feels faster today, you say. He grunts. Wind's got a name. You blink. What? He doesn't elaborate. Instead, he points up toward the sail, where someone's just finished tying off the top line. The wind's not random. It comes from places, has moods, sometimes names. You glance around. Other crew members are reacting to the wind like it's an old friend who just arrived unexpectedly. Some smiling, some squinting, one guy muttering what might be a poem or a thread, hard to tell. You lean against the rail, letting the breeze slap gently against your cheeks, tangling your hair. It's stronger than yesterday. Colder too, but not cruel, just purposeful. The woman with the storm tattoo on her neck appears beside you with a long ribbon of leather in her hand. She tosses it into the air and watches how it dances. West-northwest, she says, sharp, not violent. You ask if she can always tell direction just from wind. After enough years, she replies, you can tell when it's lying. Wait, lying? She grins. Sometimes the surface wind tells the story, but up there, she points above the sail. It's moving a whole other way. She walks off before you can ask what happens when the wind decides to lie on purpose. So you watch instead. You watch how the crew reads the wind the way other people read books. They lean into it, taste it on their tongues, sniff it like dogs catching gossip in the breeze. You watch one of them wet a finger and raise it high, eyes narrowing slightly as if the wind just whispered something scandalous. And then the sail shifts again. Just a little, but the whole ship responds. You can feel it, the change in tension, the realignment. Like every plank, every rope, every hand on board is tuning itself to match the wind's mood. You glance at the helmsman. He says, "We don't fight the wind. Because we can't." "No," he says, "because we shouldn't." He turns the steering oar slightly. The ship bends with it. A satisfying creak runs through the hull. You feel it in your teeth, and in that moment it hits you. They're not forcing their way forward. They're negotiating with the sea. The wind is their argument. The sail is their voice. The rudder is their compromise. You move toward the center mast, where a few crew members are adjusting knots. One of them, a younger woman with rope burns on every visible knuckle, beckons you over. "Want to feel something cool?" You nod before even knowing what she means. She hands you a loop of rope attached to the lower part of the sail, then signals the person across from you. They adjust a line, and suddenly the rope in your hands pulls hard. You brace. Your fingers sting, but it's exhilarating. "You're holding tension," she says. Real-time conversation between you and the wind. You grin. "Do I talk back?" She shrugs. "You can. Just know the wind's not always listening." You let go slowly, your fingers tingling. It's not just rope, it's the thread between here and where you're going. And now you've touched it. Later that afternoon, someone ties strips of dyed fabric to the tops of the mast. Small, fluttering streamers. They snap and dance in the air. "What are those for?" you ask. "For reading wind faster," someone replies. "Also looks cool." Fair enough. The clouds shift again, this time to long, flat ribbons across the horizon. The crew nods. "Steady breeze for hours," someone says, "if we don't waste it." No one intends to waste it. Dinner that night is eaten with speed, in one hand, the other gripping the rail or a rope or the excitement of actually getting somewhere. There's a hum in the air now, not from the sea or the ship, but from them, the crew, moving in rhythm, singing softly, laughing in bursts, not because everything is perfect, but because the wind is on their side. And for now, that's everything. The wind holds steady through the night, enough to keep the ship moving, but not enough to lull anyone into sleep. The hull creaks like it's telling ghost stories to the water. The sail flutters now and then, adjusting itself like a cat shifting in its sleep. You stay awake longer than usual. Maybe it's the energy on board, or maybe it's what's ahead. Because sometime just before dawn, the sea starts to change again. Not the waves, they're calm, almost suspiciously so. Not the wind, that's still loyal. But the sky. The clouds, low and fast, are being chased by something darker. You feel it before you see it, like the pressure in your chest drops just slightly, like the world is inhaling and hasn't exhaled yet. A sailor murmurs, "Storm's coming." Another replies, "No, not yet." You glance at the helmsman. He's awake, of course. Always is. Eyes narrowed, shoulders squared. Someone's tightening the rigging. Someone else is praying. A third person is sitting very still, staring straight ahead, jaw clenched like they're chewing on memories. You ask the nearest crew member, "How bad?" She shrugs. Could be nothing. Could be Thor's way of flipping the board and yelling "new game." You nod. Cool. Very comforting. As the light grows, the clouds do too. Taller now, churning, stacking. Darker at the base like bruises forming across the sky. Still no rain. Just tension. Then a voice, calm, flat. "Storm front, 10 minutes. Everything snaps into motion. The sail is pulled in slightly. Ropes lashed tighter, buckets secured. Spears stored, blankets wrapped in oilskin. Fire pit doused. Someone stashes the sunstone deep in a leather pouch and kisses it once for luck. You feel the shift in the air now. Cooler, sharper, slicing through the warmth like a knife dragged across a loaf of just baked bread. The clouds close in. The light turns gray. And then, wind. Not the gentle, confident breeze from yesterday. This one shoves. The sail billows hard, then yanks sideways, the ropes groaning like they've got complaints from 3 voyages ago. Rain starts in sudden, fat drops. No warning. Just bam. You're wet. Everyone's wet. Everything is wet. The ship lurches. You grab the nearest rail and hold tight. The sea isn't angry yet, but it's definitely irritated. "Is this the storm?" you shout over the wind. The woman next to you laughs, a little too loudly. "No." she yells. This is the argument before the storm. Oh, great. Waves rise now, higher, faster, unpredictable. You spot the boy from earlier lashing himself to a bench with rope, grinning like he's in line for a roller coaster. The helmsman calls out commands, short, clipped, confident. People respond like dancers in a well-rehearsed routine. The sail is half lowered, the steering oar is gripped by two people now. The prow dips, hard into a wave that slaps across the front of the ship like it's been waiting all week to do that. And still the crew moves with calm. You, on the other hand, are trying to decide which god to apologize to first. Someone passes you a waxed leather wrap. Inside is a lump of bread. Eat, they shout. You'll need it. You try. It tastes like salt, flour, and poor timing. The sky darkens further, no thunder yet, but the clouds are towering now, huge and spiraling, like angry smoke trying to remember how to scream. You can't see the horizon anymore. The sea and sky have merged into one wild, rolling thing. You think, okay, this is the part where everyone panics. But they don't, because this is the real part of sailing. Not the stories, not the poems, not the glorious landings with fire and feasting. This, right here, is the truth of it. Water, wind, wits, survival. A woman near the mast wraps her arm around the rigging and sings. Not a song you recognize, but a low, rhythmic chant, like she's keeping her own heartbeat steady with melody. Another sailor joins in, then another. Soon the whole crew is humming under their breath over the noise of the storm like they're humming through it. You close your eyes for a moment, soaked, freezing, ears full of ocean, and feel the chant in your chest. And somehow, strangely, you're not afraid. You're in it now, with them. The rain slaps your face, the waves lift you and drop you like the sea is testing your patience, but the ship holds, because it always has. And the people on it, they've weathered worse. This storm will pass, or it won't. Either way, you're not going anywhere. The storm doesn't end with a bang. It just gives up. The sky peels open in patches like someone's tugged the edges of a wet curtain. First comes light. Not sun exactly, but a silver glow that hits the waves and makes the sea look like it's made of melted coins. Then the rain sputters to a stop. The wind settles, exhaling one last long sigh, and leaves the sail flapping weakly like a drunk trying to salute. You open your eyes. You're still alive. You still have both boots, and miraculously, the ship is still floating. The crew is moving, but slower now, with that heavy-limbed tiredness that only comes from holding tension in your bones for hours. One man is collapsed over a coil of rope, eyes closed, mouth open, snoring like he fought the storm personally, and is now accepting tips. The helmsman hasn't moved from his post. He's soaked, streaked with salt, but calm, like he's waiting for the sea to apologize. You stand, unsteady, and immediately regret it. Everything in your body is sloshing. Beside you, a woman who spent most of the storm bailing water with a bucket leans over and retches into the sea. She wipes her mouth with the back of her hand and shrugs. It was bound to happen. You nod. To you? No, she says, to someone. You squint toward the horizon. The sky is brighter now. Broken clouds revealing a pale pink light creeping across the waves. Off to the north, a cluster of birds is circling low, dipping in and out of view. You point. Land. Maybe, says the tattooed woman who's now drying her arms with what might once have been a shirt, or just something the birds find tastier than us. As the sun rises, something strange happens. Laughter, first one person, then another. Not loud, not manic, just small bursts of disbelief, relief, victory. Someone says, we didn't die. Someone else replies, speak for yourself, Warshite, I left my soul in that last wave. The boy who tied himself to a bench stumbles across the deck, hair plastered to his forehead, face beaming. He's holding something high in one hand. It's a bucket. Found it, he says proudly. Didn't lose a single one. People cheer, genuinely cheer, because in a storm, sometimes it's not the gods you're praying to. It's the bucket you need most. Someone lights a small fire in the brazier again. The smell of smoke wraps around you like a wool blanket. Another crew member pulls out a wet, squashed bundle of herbs, sniffs it, makes a face, and tosses it overboard. Breakfast today will be whatever didn't get washed into the sea or used as emergency sail repairs. Someone hands you a lump of something vaguely bread-shaped. You take it. You chew. It tastes like gratitude and undercooked barley. Perfect. Then someone calls out, pointing toward the east. You turn, and there it is. Land. Faint but unmistakable. A jagged line breaking the horizon, dark ridges rising out of the water. You can't tell yet if it's a rocky coast, a beach, or something else entirely, but it's solid, it's there. The reaction on deck is mixed. Relief, yes, but also caution, because if there's one thing the storm taught you, it's that nothing is promised, not even this. The ship adjusts course. Oars are lowered, the sail trimmed. The dragon's head at the prow, watches the approaching land like it knows something you don't, like it always knows something you don't. The sea calms around you, too calm, not peaceful, just waiting. You move toward the bow and rest your hands on the rail. Salt crust flakes off beneath your fingers. Your palms sting from holding on too tightly for too long. Someone joins you. The same man who told you earlier the wind has a name. He stands beside you now, watching the land grow larger with every breath. You ask, "Did we win?" He shrugs, "We passed." Is that the same thing? He thinks, then answers, "Winning is a story, passing is real." And then he smiles, small, private, knowing. You passed too. The ship glides forward, gentle now, like it knows the worst is over. For now, and above you, the sky is finally blue. Not completely, not dramatically, just enough, like a bruise healing from the outside in. You close your eyes, breathing in the smell of damp wood, ash, sea, and sun. The rhythm of the waves slows in your ears. Your muscles begin to unknot, and somewhere between the edge of sleep and the pull of land, you feel the storm still inside you, not as fear, but as proof. You don't remember falling asleep. 1 minute you were watching the shore rise up, slowly, patiently, like a story being told, one syllable at a time, and the next you're blinking against sunlight that's far too warm for this part of the world. The ship is still moving, but barely now. The oars are out just for control. The wind has taken the morning off, probably to nap somewhere with better manners. The land ahead is clearer now. Jagged rocks at the edge, like broken teeth. A narrow beach tucked between two cliffs. Beyond that, a slope of green climbing upward into trees. Pines, mostly, sharp, ancient, whispering things to each other that you're not invited to hear. You sit up slowly. Your back cracks in a way that implies someone installed hinges overnight. Around you, the crew is waking too, rising, stretching, checking gear. But the mood is quiet, not cautious. Respectful. "Where are we?" you ask the nearest crew member. She looks toward the cliffs and answers, "A place that remembers." That's all she says. That's all she needs to say. The helmsman raises a hand. The oars lift. The ship drifts into shallower water with the grace of something much smaller, much quieter. The dragon head at the prow seems calmer now, not watchful, restful. You drop anchor carefully, and then, one by one, they disembark. No shouting, no orders, no war cries. You step onto the beach and feel your boots sink just slightly into the sand. It's damp, cold, but stable, more stable than the sea. The smell of pine hits you immediately, earthy and sharp. You breathe it in and feel something inside you begin to slow. The crew doesn't rush, they don't scatter. Instead, they walk together up the beach toward the edge of the woods. You follow. It takes only a few minutes to reach it. A clearing in the trees. A small circle of stones, half buried in moss. At first glance you think it might be ruins, but no, these were placed. Deliberately, reverently. A ring, not broken, just aged. In the center, a mound of earth rises, soft, round, untouched. At its head, a post, a simple wooden carving, worn smooth by wind and time, but still standing. No one speaks. No one has to. This is a grave. You realize now what kind of landing this is. Not a raid, not trade, a return. You stand with the others as they begin to place small offerings on the mound. A carved bead, a coin, a feather, a stone shaped like a tear. No names are spoken, but the silence says everything. This person, whoever they were, mattered, and this place remembers. Someone begins to hum. A low, soft tone, wordless, not a chant, not a hymn, just vibration and breath. You close your eyes. You picture the person buried here, someone who once stood where you stand now, held the same rope, faced the same wind, fought the same sea, laughed at the same ridiculous jokes, probably invented some of them. Maybe they died here. Maybe they were brought home. Either way, this is where they rest, and this is where their people still come to remember. You open your eyes as the humming fades. A few people step forward and press their palms to the wooden marker. One presses her forehead to it and whispers something only the wind will ever hear. You feel a lump in your throat, and you didn't even know them. That's the thing about grief out here. It doesn't need to be yours to be real. It's part of the voyage, part of the culture, part of the agreement you make with the sea. You can go, you can live, you can chase the edge of the world, but sometimes someone doesn't come back, and when that happens, you remember them. Not with fanfare, not with speeches, with presence, with return, with silence. Eventually, the crew begins to walk back, slow, quiet steps through pine needles and memory. You linger a moment longer. You step forward. You place your hand on the wooden post. It's warm from the sun, rough, splintered, real. You don't know who they were, but you say, softly, we're still sailing. And then you follow the others down the hill, toward the ship that's still waiting, toward the sea that always calls, toward the next place the wind remembers. The ship feels heavier now, not in the way it floats, but in the way it carries things that can't be tied down. You sense it in the silence of the crew as they climb aboard. No one speaks, no one jokes. Even the waves seem to hush themselves like they know what's been left behind on that beach. You find your spot near the mast and sit down slowly, cloak damp against your back. The sails aren't raised yet. The ship drifts, anchor up but unhurried. The sea holds you gently, rocking like a breath held halfway. Someone near the front breaks the silence. North, she says. That's all. The helmsman nods, makes a slight gesture. A few crew members rise, still quiet, and begin their work. Ropes are coiled, the sail is unfurled. The wind is light but steady, coming from the south now like it knows you're ready to move on. You watch the trees recede behind you as the ship pulls away. The grave is no longer visible, but you can feel its presence lingering, like something woven into the fibers of the hull now. Beside you, the woman with the neck tattoo. 2 waves, 2 lines, sits down cross-legged. She doesn't say anything for a long time. Then, with her eyes fixed ahead, she says, "We always leave something behind." You nod and carry something with us. She glances at you, half a smile on her lips. You're learning. The wind stiffens a little, enough to move the sail, enough to move you. You squint at the sea ahead. There's something new now, not land, not storm, but a feeling, something strange. You smell it first, sharp, earthy, and a little sweet, not salt, not pine, something alive. Rocks ahead, someone calls. You walk toward the rail and see them, low, dark formations rising just above the surface. Not threatening, not large, but odd. You ask what they are. Marker stone, says the boy who loves seaweed snacks, placed here generations ago. By who? He shrugs. Someone who needed to find their way back. The rocks aren't random. They're deliberate, placed in patterns, spaced evenly. You realize they form a line cutting through the water like stitches across the sea's fabric. Someone made a path. Someone wanted to be found again. You ask if they're always above the surface. Depends on the tide, he says. Sometimes they vanish for weeks. You imagine sailing here in fog, trusting the sea to rise just enough so the stones return. Or worse, knowing they're there, invisible, waiting to snap a hull in half if you drift even slightly off course. And yet, they're still used, because they're true even when they're hidden. Like grief, like memory, like the stars in the day. You pass between 2 of the stones, close enough to touch them. One is etched with something, runes, barely legible. You reach out, fingertips grazing the edge. It says, "We return." You don't know if that's a promise or a warning. Farther ahead, the wind shifts again. The crew adjusts. Everyone is looser now, less rigid. The silence is breaking slowly. Someone sneezes. Someone else laughs. A voice begins to sing a quiet, strange tune with no real melody, just a hum rising and falling. You sit again, letting the song wrap around you like fog. It doesn't fill the space left by the grave. It just rides with it. Like another passenger, the sun climbs higher. The water sparkles. You notice birds circling above, a new kind this time. Small, fast, jittery things, darting toward the waves, then vanishing again. Land birds, you ask? Not yet, replies the helmsman, but they're thinking about it. As the coastline fades behind you, a light breeze carries a new scent across the deck. Moss, maybe, or rain from far away. Something else is waiting. And the ship, sensing it, leans forward ever so slightly, eager to arrive. You close your eyes. You feel the ship breathe beneath you, and you understand something new. Some places pull you back, others push you forward. But the sea just lets you choose, and today you are choosing forward. The days are beginning to stretch now. Longer lights, softer air, skies that hold their color just a little bit longer before surrendering to dusk. The sea has calmed, not entirely, it never does, but enough that you start to notice the space between the waves. that soft rhythm, like breathing. You're lying on the deck with your head propped on a rolled-up cloak, watching a bird circle overhead. Not a gull this time, something darker, sleeker. Fast wings, sharp turns. It's not searching for food, it's watching you. You ask the boy nearby. He's tying knots into a rope like it owes him money. What kind of bird is that? He looks up, squints. Raven. You sit up. Aren't they land birds? He shrugs. This one has good balance. You watch the raven circle once more, then peel off toward the northeast like it just remembered it left the oven on. The boy goes back to his knots. And then someone calls, time to sleep, or time to steer. It's half a joke, half a warning. The light is shifting now. That odd, not quite day, not quite night glow that lingers in northern latitudes. White night, someone calls it. The sun won't fully set. It will just dip low, hover near the edge of the world like it's afraid to leave you in the dark. And with that strange sky comes strange sleep. You try to lie down again. You try to let go. But your body is confused. Your brain keeps thinking, surely we're not done yet. The light says yes. The wind says no. You look around and see others struggling too. One woman is sitting cross-legged, eyes closed, clearly trying to meditate. A man is walking the perimeter of the deck like he's lost something, probably sleep. Someone else is just staring at the horizon, chewing dried meat with the slow resentment of a person who'd rather be chewing a pillow. The ship creaks softly, adjusting to the not night. Eventually the helmsman, still half shadow, half legend, grunts and says, "We'll switch to pairs. One wakes, one rests. We follow the light." You nod like that makes perfect sense. You're paired with the woman who gave you the bread after the storm. She smiles at you now like she's not even tired, like she was designed for white nights. Her hair's braided back tight, not a strand out of place, her hands already wrapped around the steering oar. "You first," she says. "Rest. I'll call you if anything exciting happens." You lie down again, eyes open, eyes closed. Eyes open again, you ask, "What if I don't fall asleep?" She shrugs. Then you listen. To what? The light. You consider arguing, then decide against it. Instead, you close your eyes again and listen. To the wind, to the rope stretching with every shift, to the low hum of the sail, to the faint whisper of someone singing under their breath at the bow. To the light, not sound, but presence, pressing gently against your eyelids and slowly, impossibly it works. You don't fall asleep. Not quite. But you fall into something else, a drifting, a weightlessness, a space between dreams and waking, where your thoughts are less like sentences and more like smoke. You're not sure how long you're in it. But then she's there again, gently tapping your foot with her boot. "Your turn," she says. "We've made good distance." You sit up, blinking. The light hasn't changed. Still pale, still glowing, still there. You take the steering oar. It's warm, worn smooth, familiar now. She lies down, arms behind her head, eyes already closed. You stand, you steer, you breathe, and as the ship sails through the not night under a sky that refuses to darken, you finally understand. This journey doesn't pause, it only shifts. And even in the longest light, you learn how to rest, how to watch, how to wait. By the time the sun decides to rise again, though let's be honest, it never really left. The world is soft gold and pale blue, like someone spilled warm milk into the sky and forgot to clean it up. The air is crisper than you expect. Not cold, just honest. The kind of clean that smells like moss, wet stone, and the first breath after grief. You're still holding the steering oar. You didn't mean to. At some point, someone else should have taken over, but they never came, and you didn't call. The ship has been gliding so smoothly it felt rude to interrupt. The woman who paired with you is still asleep. Or maybe she's pretending. Either way, you don't wake her. She earned that rest. So did you. But for now, your hands stay on the oar and the sea stays calm and the world doesn't need anything else from you. Not yet. Someone finally stirs near the mast, stretches with a groan that turns into a yawn halfway through. Another crew member mutters something about cold feet and warm regrets, then disappears behind a coil of rope like it can protect him from morning. You glance ahead and that's when you see it. A shape on the water. Small, still, round. It's a vessel. Not like yours, not a long ship. This one's squat, flat-bottomed, made for rivers or shallow bays. The sail is tattered, the hull patched with what looks like layers of reed in desperation. It's drifting, no crew visible. The rest of your ship notices it around the same time. Voices rise, but not alarmed. Curious. A few oars are lowered to stabilize your approach. You angle the ship just enough to come alongside without creating a wake that might tip the other craft. And then you see him. A single man inside, curled in the bottom of the boat, covered in furs. One hand on a tiller, the other holding a small wooden bowl. He's alive. Barely, eyes cracked open, lips dry. He tries to sit up, but doesn't make it. Someone from your crew jumps aboard without hesitation and kneels beside him. You hear low murmurs. A flask passed. Water dribbled gently. The man coughs once, twice, then manages to whisper something that sounds like 3 days. 3 days adrift. 3 days. No oars, no sail, no direction. You help pull the boat closer, lash it to the side, gently, like welcoming a ghost into your home. The man is lifted aboard, not carried like a burden, but held like a child. One woman wraps him in her cloak without a word. Another presses warm bread into his palm, even as his fingers tremble too much to hold it. He's not one of you. His accent is wrong, his clothes are foreign, but no one asks questions. Not yet, because out here, adrift is adrift, and rescue is rescue. Later, when he's fed and warm and finally able to sit up, he explains. Pirates, or something like them. A raid gone wrong. Crew scattered. Boat damaged, drifted too far, too fast. He was the only one who stayed with the wreckage. Or maybe the wreckage stayed with him. You listen, the crew listens. No judgment, no pity, just quiet recognition. Someone brings over a carved token from their pouch, a tiny wooden fish with a hole through the middle. They press it into his hand. He looks confused. It's a charm, the boy says, for the ones who float too far. The man doesn't answer. He just closes his fist around it and nods. The rest of the day passes gently. The sea remains friendly. The sky open. The rescued man sleeps again, this time with less fear in his face. Your ship sails on, carrying now not just your crew, but him and everything he lost and everything he might still find. Then you realize this is what it means to sail without not just oars and sails and wind, but witnessing, catching each other when the sea lets go. Before night falls again, if it ever really does, someone scrawls a new mark on the hull, just beside the dragon's eye. A circle, with a dot inside. Symbol for return, not a destination. A second chance. And as the ship cuts quietly through the evening calm, you look back once at the little boat still tied alongside and think, that could have been me. Then you turn forward again, because now you're both going somewhere. By now, the sea feels like a companion. Not a friend, exactly, more like a coworker you've grown to trust. You don't always agree with it, you definitely wouldn't lend it money. But you understand each other. It pushes, you adjust, it quiets, you listen, it roars, you hold on. This morning, it's merciful, smooth, the kind of calm that makes you wonder if the world has forgotten about you for a moment. You're okay with that. The man you rescued is awake now, seated quietly near the stern. Someone braided his hair while he slept. A few of the crew gave him new boots, and no one said a word about it. He's not one of you, not yet. But the sea decided he gets a second chapter, and everyone here respects the editor-in-chief. You're crouched near the cook fire again, not because there's food, but because there's heat. The brazier sizzles quietly as a thin strip of smoked meat warms over the flame. Someone hums behind you. A low, steady tune, familiar now. Not cheerful, not sad, just there. And then it happens. The name. Someone calls it out loud like a toast. It's your name. But not the one you told them, the one they gave you. It's long, a little ridiculous, filled with syllables you're pretty sure were invented mid-voyage. One part references the bucket you threw up in during the storm, another includes a pun that only works in Old Norse if you squint and pretend you're drunk. The whole crew laughs, including you, especially you, because now you have a Viking name, and that means something. In this world, names are earned, names are gifts, names carry stories. Your name, this one given in jest and salt and wind, is proof that you've crossed some invisible line, from outsider to not quite insider, but accepted, folded into the rhythm. The helmsman chuckles and repeats your name again, drawing it out like it's an old song. Someone carves it onto a plank near the mast. Poorly, one letter backwards, one upside down, doesn't matter. It's yours now. You sit back, grinning heart fuller than your stomach has been in days. And then, just when you think the moment's passed, the woman with the storm tattoo points toward the horizon. Village, she says. You squint. There it is. Just a smudge at first. Then clearer. smoke rising in soft curls, small thatched rooftops hugging a narrow inlet, a watchtower, a dock, a few people moving like ants, sift tiny and slow from this distance. The crew straightens up. This isn't a raid, not today, but it's still an arrival, and arrivals matter. Someone undusts off their tunic, someone else braids their hair tighter. A few stretch as if to shake the sea from their bones. You do the same. You suddenly care about your appearance, even though you're wearing a salt-crusted cloak, and your face hasn't seen a mirror in weeks. As the village grows larger, the atmosphere shifts again, subtle but unmistakable. Because this isn't just a stop, it's a place to talk, trade, tell stories, and maybe to see who's been waiting. The man you rescued rises slowly, like someone testing the strength of his second chance. He's holding the little wooden fish charm still. He doesn't say anything, just breathes in through his nose and lets it out slow, like he's preparing for something older than regret. The ship glides into the inlet with practiced grace. The crew lowers the sail. The oars dip once, twice, then silence. You hear voices on shore and then laughter. Someone recognizes someone. A woman runs to the dock, waving. One of your crew stands taller. And just like that, a reunion begins. Not yours, not yet, but watching it still feels like being part of something holy. The ship bumps gently against the dock. Ropes are thrown, tied, hands reach out, arms wrap around each other. No one cries, not openly, just tight-lipped smiles and nods that hold more weight than entire monologues. You step off last, boots on wood, salt on skin, name on lips, and as your feet touch land, the boy with the knots nudges you. First thing they'll ask, he says, what you're called. You smile, and you tell them. The dock groans beneath your boots like it's not used to newcomers, not ones like you. You shift your weight and glance back at the ship, still bobbing gently in the inlet, its dragon-headed prow staring out to sea like it already misses the horizon. The crew has begun to scatter, but not aimlessly. Some head to the market square, where smoke from cook fires curls into the air like it's got stories to tell. Others are already deep in conversation with villagers, clasping arms, exchanging grins, swapping news the way most people swap goods. It's not chaos, it's reconnection. This isn't just a village, it's a touch point. One of the places Viking crews return to again and again, not because it's easy, but because it remembers them. The houses are low and timber-framed, the roofs patched with thatch and sod. Goats bleat somewhere off to your right. Chickens strut like they own the place, and in the middle of it all, people. Real people. One man is weaving rope outside his home, his fingers moving like he's conducting a slow-motion symphony. A woman sharpens a knife on a flat stone while humming a lullaby to the baby on her back. A group of children is gathered around a carved pole, daring each other to climb it. One tries, falls, laughs, tries again. The man you rescued from the drift boat walks into the square. The wooden fish charm still looped around his wrist. He spots someone across the way, a figure in a gray cloak, and stops. They stare at each other, and then they run. They crash into each other in a hug that says, "We thought you were gone." You look away, not out of discomfort, out of respect. Nearby, your crew begins unpacking small bundles. Goods for trade, furs, bone needles, carved trinkets, herbs dried and bundled. You wander toward them, still unsure if you're a participant or just a shadow tagging along for the ride. Then someone grabs your shoulder. You eat yet? It's the tattooed woman. Of course it is. You shake your head. She thrusts a wooden bowl into your hands. Inside, stew. Thick, dark, fragrant. Bits of fish, onion, maybe turnip, maybe something you don't want to identify. You raise it to your nose. It smells like every good thing you've ever earned. You take a bite. Hot, savory, perfect. She nods, pleased. Now you're really one of us. You eat beside her on a low bench near the fire pit, bowl warm in your hands, steam rising lazily into the afternoon light. Around you, conversation swells and dips like waves. You catch snippets in Norse, in tongues you don't recognize, in laughter universal to every language. A man begins telling a story, loudly, dramatically. He gestures with his bowl, nearly flinging stew onto the child beside him. The crowd laughs. You don't know the tale, but the rhythm is clear. Set up, pause, punchline, roar. You ask the woman next to you, "Is it always like this?" She thinks, then shakes her head. No. Sometimes it rains. Later, a trader shows you a piece of carved amber, holding it up so the sunlight's fossil inside, a tiny insect forever mid-step. He tries to sell it to you. You shake your head. He shrugs and smiles, then gives it to you anyway. A gift, he says, for someone who came back with a name. You slip it into your pouch. Even later still, as the sun begins to drop, finally, after days of pretending it didn't know how, someone starts a fire in the center of the square. Logs are stacked. Flames catch. Sparks drift upward like tiny stars trying to remember where they came from. People gather, more food is passed around. Meat on sticks, bread with herbs, pickled things in wooden bowls. A jug appears, you don't ask what's in it, and begins to make the rounds. And then, of course, the stories start. Real ones, fictional ones, the kind that ride the line between both. One sailor tells the tale of a sea beast that mistook their ship for its egg. Another swears they once rode into a cloud that whispered directions in rhyme. Someone else insists that goats can predict weather, but only if you feed them apples first. You're asked to share one too. At first, you hesitate, then you stand. Bowl in one hand, voice steady, you tell them about your first night on the ship, about the fog, about the horned helmet that scared the seagulls, about the storm that nearly broke your spine, and about the silence afterward, how it said more than thunder ever could. They listen, really listen. And when you finish, someone claps, another hoots. The crew nods, like they already knew this story, but were waiting for you to say it. You sit back down, cheeks flushed, heart full, and you realize this village, this fire, this moment, it's not a stopover, it's a chapter. One written not with sails and salt, but with belonging. By morning, the village has already begun to reshape around your presence. The goat that was snorting at you yesterday now tolerates your existence. The baker, whose bread is suspiciously dense but soul-saving, nods when you pass, which apparently is the local equivalent of a bear hug. The children, emboldened by your half-understood jokes at the fire last night, now run by and shout your Viking name like it's a spell they just learned to pronounce. You're walking through the square when someone hands you a bundle of flax. Help, they say. No question, no explanation, and suddenly you're pulling strips of fiber through a wooden comb under the firm instruction of a woman whose eyebrows move more than her mouth. She doesn't speak much, but her eyes say everything, especially when you tangle the threads for the third time. Better than last year's visitor, she mutters eventually. You take that as high praise. Nearby, a group is repairing a fishing net, fingers moving fast. Like this is less about function and more about memory. One of them looks up and gestures for you to join, and so after a brief tutorial that involves a lot of sighing and miming, you're tying knots alongside them. The rhythm of village life is quiet but insistent. You haul, you stitch, you carry, you listen. It's not work for the sake of labor. It's work as connection. Every net tied is a story. Every roof thatched is a promise. Every chore is a thread in something bigger. At midday, the air grows thick with the smell of smoke and roasting meat. It's not a feast. Not exactly. Just a meal worth sharing. You're waved over without invitation. Your bowl is filled without question. You sit among people you didn't know 3 days ago, but who now hand you food like you've always been here. Someone passes you a strip of grilled fish and says, "So you stayin'?" You freeze, fish halfway to your mouth. "What?" "You could," they say, grinning. "We've had stranger." You laugh, but the question lingers. Not because it's ridiculous, but because it suddenly doesn't feel like it is. You think about the sea, about the ship, the wind, the storms, the moments between. But this is the first time you've stood on land and still felt part of something. Later, as the sun dips and the sky softens, the helmsman calls a meeting. Not loudly, just a look, a tilt of the head, and suddenly the crew is gathering near the edge of the village, where the ship waits, its ropes slack, its sail furled like it's sleeping. You stand with them, no formal speeches, just updates, plans, a new heading, a weather pattern, a rumor of an island with strange birds and better meat. Maybe. The crew listens. Some nod, some stretch. One person is already checking their boots, and then the helmsman looks at you. No question, no pressure, just the look. Are you coming? The rest of the crew doesn't wait for your answer. They begin walking toward the dock, moving like they've done this 100 times, because they have. You stand there for a moment longer. The village behind you is still humming. People cleaning, cooking, stitching, singing. One of the kids is chasing that goat again, And the goat, as always, is one flick of hoof away from starting a new legend. You take a breath, then you turn toward the ship. Because as much as you feel part of this place, your story isn't done being written out there. You walk slowly, then faster, feet finding rhythm, and when you step back aboard, the deck creaks softly beneath you. Not protesting, just welcoming. The crew doesn't cheer, doesn't speak, but they make room. They always do. You stow your gear, you roll your shoulders, and you take your place because you could stay, but you're meant to go. The sea remembers, and so do you. The ropes are untied in silence. No ceremony, no grand farewell, just hands moving in rhythm, unwrapping the ship from the land like a thread pulled from a sleeve. No one waves, no one needs to. The people in the village simply watch, nod once, and return to their work. They know you'll be back, or you won't. But either way, they've already added you to their stories. The tide's with you as you push off, a gentle pull that feels more like suggestion than demand. The dragon prow lifts slightly as if sniffing the air ahead, eager to leave the scent of wood smoke and warm bread behind in exchange for salt and secrets. You're standing near the bow, fingers wrapped loosely around the rail. The breeze is soft but steady. It plays with your hair, your color, your thoughts. Someone passes you a skin of water. Another tosses you a dried fig with a grin that says, "You'll thank me later." You catch it midair and tuck it away. You've learned by now, every gift, no matter how small, is a kind of blessing. As the coastline shrinks behind you, the sea stretches out, wide and waiting. You ask no one in particular, "Where are we going?" The helmsman hears you anyway. He replies without turning, "Somewhere we haven't yet misunderstood." You're not entirely sure what that means, but you like it. As the afternoon unfolds, the ship returns to its quiet rhythm, the creak of wood, the slap of waves, the occasional curse when someone forgets that one rope bites back if you pull it wrong. A new crew member joins you near the mast, the one who replaced a lost oar yesterday with a carved branch and stubborn optimism. He leans in and points toward the horizon. "See that line? That's not cloud." You squint, and sure enough, there it is. Faint, thin, almost unwilling to be noticed. A slight discoloration in the sky where the blue turns just a bit too solid. "Land?" you ask. He nods. "Probably." "What kind?" He shrugs. "The kind that either feeds you, fights you, or forgets you." "Excellent." You settle near the prow and let your thoughts drift in time with the ship. Every wave feels like punctuation, every breeze a whispered edit. You think about the people you met, the ones you've left behind, the ones still ahead. You wonder how many lives one person can have on a single journey. The answer apparently is as many as the wind allows. Later, someone takes out a small carved box and begins tossing runes onto a blanket spread over a barrel. A few crew members gather around. Quiet betting, occasional laughter. One sailor frowns deeply at their result and mutters, again with the goat. You're invited to try. You kneel. The carved woman offers the bag. You reach in. The rune you draw is simple. A curve like a smile or a crescent moon or a boat viewed from above. She nods. That one's for movement. Journey, not arriving. Going. You smile. Fitting. The ship sails on into dusk. This time, the sun does set. Not entirely, but enough that gold gives way to lavender. Shadows stretch, the waves soften. Someone lights the fire pit again. You're given a piece of dried meat. Warmed, spiced, strangely delicious. The crew settles into that rare kind of silence. Earned silence. The kind that only follows motion and trust. The kind that doesn't need to fill space. It holds it. You lean back against the mast, eyes half closed as the stars begin to show themselves one by one. And you think, you could have stayed, but then you wouldn't have seen this. Out here, every moment is borrowed, but no one asks for it back. Not yet. The stars are clearer tonight. Fewer clouds, less mist. The kind of sky that makes you feel like you're floating upward, not outward. The sea below is velvet dark, soft-edged, quiet. No waves, just a ripple now and then, like the ocean is whispering to itself and doesn't care if you listen. You're lying on your back near the midship, cloak pulled tight, one hand tucked beneath your head, the other holding the rune you drew earlier. The journey one. You keep running your thumb across it. It's smooth but not polished, still rough enough to remind you as once part of something bigger. The woman with the storm tattoo lies nearby, arm draped over her eyes. You're thinking too loud, she says. You glance over. I didn't say anything, exactly. You both lie there for a while, the kind of companionable silence that doesn't need to be filled. Above, the stars shift, slowly, deliberately. A few form familiar shapes. One or two don't. You point at a jagged cluster near the east. What's that one called? She lifts her arm just enough to peek. That's the sickle of Njord, god of wind and sea travel. Also goats. You squint. I thought Thor was the one with the goats. She shrugs. They borrow each other's animals sometimes. You both chuckle. The sea doesn't. It just listens. You shift your gaze to the constellations overhead, each one a small, impossible miracle. You wonder how many sailors before you followed these same stars. How many learned to trust them? How many disappeared under them, trying? The helmsman appears at your side, quiet as a thought. He drops to a crouch, then sits cross-legged, his eyes never leaving the sky. He raises one hand and traces a line from one star to another, then another. A triangle, a crooked path, a promise. That's how we find home, he says. Not boastful, just certain. You ask, you always know which way to go. He thinks for a moment, then shakes his head. No, but the stars always know where they are, and if you're patient enough, they'll remind you too. You nod. That tracks. He stays a moment longer, then stands, brushing the salt from his knees, and returns to the stern where the rudder hums like an old lullaby. Later, someone starts singing. Soft, wordless, a low, winding tune that sounds like it was passed from ocean to mouth without ever touching land. Others join in, not in harmony but in layers, like tide on tide. A sea of voices. You close your eyes. The deck beneath you is firm. The wind, barely a breeze now. The stars above, constant. You begin to recognize their personalities. One sparkles brighter than the others. Too bright, really. Probably showing off. Another always seems to hide behind a cloud. One in particular pulses steadily like a heartbeat just over the prow. Star of the Wanderer, someone whispers. You open one eye. The boy with the seaweed. He's pointing at the pulsing light. Sailors follow it when they don't know where else to go. You ask, does it always lead home? He shrugs. Not home, but somewhere better than staying lost. That star watches you all night, even when your eyes close again, even when the ship glides on in silence. Even when dreams begin to rise, slow and curling, like smoke from a night fire long since gone out. You dream of whales, a fog of runes that whisper your name in a voice that sounds suspiciously like yours. And when the sky finally begins to pale again, you wake to find the star has disappeared. But the ship still moves forward. And that's enough. Morning comes in layers. First, the cold, the kind that slips under your cloak and nestles behind your knees like an impolite cat. Then the gray, flat, heavy light that doesn't quite commit to being day. And finally the sounds, the creak of wet rope, the soft groan of the hull adjusting to a new rhythm. A quiet muttered curse as someone drops a ladle into the sea. You sit up slowly, blinking salt from your eyelashes. The sky is low, heavy, not storm dark, but tired. The kind of weather that makes you want to wrap yourself in fur and not do anything heroic until after a second breakfast. But the crew is already in motion. The helmsman is chewing something that might be bread or might be regret. A few of the rowers are shifting benches, checking for cracks. One sailor is polishing his blade, not because he needs to, but because the habit has become part of his morning prayer. And ahead of you, on the horizon, land. Real land. Not a sliver of coast, not a distant ridge. This is bigger, thicker, wilder. Forests that stretch like dark ink along the shoreline. Mountains hunched in the distance, hunched like sleeping beasts. No signs of buildings, no towers, just wild. You move closer to the prow as the ship glides forward. You can feel the tension, subtle, coiled under every boot step and breath. This isn't a friendly landing, not unfriendly either, just unknown. The woman with the neck tattoo appears beside you. She's scanning the coastline with narrowed eyes, fingers twitching near the hilt of her knife, not in fear but in readiness. Seen this place before? You ask. Once, she says. Didn't stay long. Why? She turns to look at you. Because it didn't want us to. The ship slows. Oars are pulled. The sail adjusted. You drift toward a narrow inlet, ringed with rocks, slick from tide and time. The water here is too still, too clear. Like it hasn't decided whether you're welcome. The helmsman calls for anchor. It drops with a low, satisfying thunk and a shudder through the ship's spine. A few crew members begin to ready gear. Small packs, blades sheathed, cloaks cinched. Not for battle, for scouting. You're not the first to volunteer, but you're not the last either. Boots hit the shallows. The cold cuts through instantly. Not painful, just sharp. Like the land wants to remind you whose store you're walking into. The woods ahead are dense, wrapped in mist. Every tree seems to lean in slightly as if listening. The path isn't obvious, but you follow the others, weaving between roots and wet stone, breathing in earth and moss and something faintly metallic. The woman beside you stops suddenly. She crouches, points, tracks. Not booted, barefoot, large, too large. Bear, you whisper. She shakes her head. Wrong gate. You raise an eyebrow. Worse. She smiles. Weirder. Good. You continue deeper. The forest doesn't open. It presses. The air grows thicker, the silence louder. Then you reach it, a clearing. In the center, a circle of standing stones, tall, lichen-covered, leaning in like elders deep in debate. In the middle, a stone altar, cracked, stained, old, very old. No words are spoken. The crew fans out, respectful, cautious, reverent. This is not your place. This is someone else's memory. You step forward slowly, fingers brushing one of the stones. It hums faintly beneath your touch, like a song trapped in rock, too shy to come out. Someone behind you mutters, "This isn't on any map." Someone else replies, "That's the point." The helmsman kneels by the altar, places a single coin atop, not as payment, as permission. And then, as if the land were holding its breath this whole time, it exhales. A breeze moves through the clearing, not strong, but real. The tension breaks, the silence softens, the stones still lean. But now they seem less like they're watching you, and more like they're waiting to be remembered. You stay only a few more minutes, enough to leave something small behind, a feather, a ring, a word you whisper into the moss. No one sees what you give. That's between you and the land. And when you return to the ship, boots soaked, face wind-burned, hands damp with forest breath, you don't say much, but you feel it. Something opened and something let you go. The wind returns as you leave the shoreline, not with force, but with purpose. It brushes past your ears like a whisper from something old and distant, something that saw you in the forest, watched you place your offering, and decided, for now, to let you pass. You're quiet when you step back aboard. Everyone is. The crew moves with a kind of hush usually reserved for temples and storms. Boots are scraped clean. Gear is stowed. The sail is raised, but no one speaks, not because of fear, because of respect. You sit near the center mast, legs stretched out, watching the inlet grow smaller behind you. The standing stones are long gone, hidden behind trees and mist and time, but the feeling hasn't left. It's still in your chest. A weight. A knowing, a gift you didn't realize you'd asked for. The woman with the storm tattoo is sharpening her blade beside you, but she stops after a few strokes. Her fingers rest gently on the hilt. Sometimes, she says, not looking up, the land speaks louder than the sea. You nod. And sometimes, she adds, eyes narrowing just slightly toward the east. The sea listens. Ahead, the water opens wide. Bluer now, brighter. You're sailing into a new current, literally and otherwise. The ship hums with subtle excitement, like a horse catching scent of open field. The air smells different too. Salt, yes, but with something sweeter riding the wind. Flowers, fruit trees, civilization, not yet, but close. The helmsman, steady as ever, calls a slight turn. The sail shifts, the ship responds without complaint. Then there it is. Smoke, thin gray ribbons curling into the sky far ahead. Not fire smoke. Not destruction. This is home smoke, the kind that rises from hearths and cook fires, from forges and ovens and pots left on too long. Someone near the prow calls out settlement. Others stand. A few shade their eyes. You squint. It's real. Docks. Small boats bobbing in the shallows. Stone buildings with thatched roofs tucked close to one another, like they've spent their whole lives surviving wind together. A wall, not high, but solid, circles the inland edge. A watchtower. A windmill turning slowly. And people. So many people. You feel the crew shift around you, backs straightening, chins rising, eyes sharpening. This place, whatever it is, isn't unfamiliar. You hear one sailor say, "Didn't think we'd make it by midsummer." Another mutters, "If Eric still owes me money, I'm collecting interest." As the ship approaches, a horn sounds from the watchtower. Not a warning, a welcome. The notes rise over the sea, low and rolling. Not a fanfare, but an acknowledgement. They see you. They remember you. You stand as the ship is pulled in with ropes and practiced hands. A dozen figures appear on the dock. Some wave, some don't, but they're waiting, expecting. The helmsman speaks quietly as he passes you. This place, he says, is where we pause. Not stop, just pause. You nod. As you step off the ship, something shifts in your step. Not exhaustion, not stiffness. It's something else. Gravitas. You've sailed far, fought wind and fog and the ache of being unsure. You've carried stories and earned them. Now you walk like someone who's been changed by distance. The people greet the crew with warmth and restraint. There are no shouts, no chaos, just claps on the shoulders, steady handshakes, and quiet words spoken in corners. You're offered bread, you're offered ale, you're offered a moment. You take it, and in the soft afternoon light you find a bench by the dock. Sit, exhale. Around you, the world continues. Children laugh, wheels turn, dogs bark. Someone is yelling about fish prices in a voice that suggests this argument has lasted 3 generations. And through it all, the ship floats beside you. Not left behind, not waiting, just breathing, just listening. You close your eyes, and for the first time in a long while, you let your guard down. Not because the journey is over, but because you finally earned a pause. Evening drapes itself gently over the settlement, laying its weight across rooftops and fire pits, curling into corners like a cat that knows exactly where it belongs. The sky fades from pale gold to lavender, then deeper, softer, darker, until only the firelight remains, flickering against walls and cheeks and the curved edge of your memory. You sit by the dock, watching the last glow slide off the water like oil. The ship is moored behind you, still and silent, the dragon head resting low as if it too is tired, not from the distance, but from carrying so much. Around you, the crew has scattered, some to visit familiar homes, some to negotiate, some to disappear into the arms of people they didn't think they'd live to see again. No one's rushed, no one's loud, everyone moves like they understand something now that can't be said aloud. The wind is gone. The sea is calm. The stars haven't come yet. It's the quiet between pages. Beside you, the boy with the knots is carving something into the dock's edge. You lean over to look. It's a fish. One eye. Crooked smile. He glances at you. For luck, he says, for whoever comes next. You ask, you always leave something? He nods. You have to, otherwise the sea doesn't know where you've been. You smile, then you reach into your pouch, and you leave the rune, the one for the journey, right beside his fish. You don't need to carry it anymore. Across the square, someone's playing a lyre. Soft, tentative plucks that sound like a song trying to remember its own beginning. A few crew members are gathered nearby, sipping from clay cups, heads low in conversation. You watch them for a while, then look past them, toward the gate that leads out of the village. It's open, not wide, just enough. You wonder if the next journey has already begun. The woman with the storm tattoo appears beside you, sitting down with a grunt and passing you half a piece of dried fruit. You're not staying, she says, not a question. You shake your head. No, she nods. Didn't think you would. You both sit in silence for a while, chewing, watching, letting the village settle around you like a blanket. Then she says, "You're not who you were." You ask, "Who am I?" She shrugs. "Whoever you are now, that's who you earned." Later, the helmsman joins you both. He doesn't sit, just rests one hand on the dock post, the other still wrapped around the hilt of a knife that hasn't seen use in days. "We sail again in the morning," he says, "before the wind remembers how to argue." You nod, he looks at you. "You coming?" You pause, then say, "Yes," not because you have to, but because you can. He nods once and walks away without another word. You sit there until the lyre stops playing, until the fire becomes embers, until the sky fills with stars again, familiar ones now, named ones, ones that have watched you change and chose not to fall. When you finally rise, stretch, and walk back toward the ship, the world feels quiet in a way that isn't empty. It's full of what you've seen, full of what you've learned, full of what comes next. You lie down on the deck one last time. The boards creak beneath you like they're saying goodnight. The stars blink slowly above. You let your eyes close. The sea is waiting. The wind is listening, and somewhere out there, just beyond tomorrow, is another beginning. End of script.